The first thing I noticed when I woke up wasn't the sterile white walls or the industrial bed rails. It was the smell, that unmistakable cocktail of disinfectant, cafeteria food, and despair that marks institutions where people go to be forgotten. My name is Judge Elena Martinez, and at 68 years old, I'd just been kidnapped by my own stepchildren. "Good morning, Mrs. Martinez," a cheerful aide said, bustling in with a tray of pills. "Time for your medications." I sat up slowly, my mind sharp despite the grogginess from whatever they'd used to sedate me. "What medications? I don't take any medications." The aide's smile faltered. Now, let's not be difficult. Your family said you often forget." "Young woman," I interrupted, using the voice that had silenced countless courtrooms, "I am Federal Judge Elena Martinez of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. I take exactly 2 medications, a daily vitamin and occasional ibuprofen. I do not have dementia. I have been placed here against my will, and if you attempt to force unknown medications on me, you will be named as a co-defendant in the lawsuit I'm about to file." The tray clattered as the aide stepped back. I need to get the supervisor." "You do that, and bring the facility administrator while you're at it. Tell them Judge Martinez would like a word." As she scurried away, I took stock of my situation. The last clear memory I had was having dinner at home. Robert and Patricia, my late husband Frank's children, had insisted on coming over to discuss my future. They'd brought wine, expensive wine, which should have been my first warning. They never spent money on me unless they wanted something. The wine, they'd drugged the wine. I swung my legs over the bed, testing my balance. Whatever they'd used was mostly out of my system, but I could feel the lingering effects. My cell phone was gone. Of course, my wallet too. I was wearing a hospital gown and gripper socks, the uniform of the institutionalized. "Mrs. Martinez?" A man in a rumpled suit appeared at the door. "I'm Dr. Hendricks, the facility director. I understand there's been some confusion?" "No confusion, doctor. I've been kidnapped, drugged, and falsely imprisoned. My stepchildren have committed elder abuse, fraud, and likely a host of federal crimes. I need access to a phone immediately." He shifted uncomfortably. "Your family said you might say things like this, that you've been showing signs of paranoia and delusion." "Dr. Hendricks, let me ask you something. Do you know what the penalty is for unlawful detention of a federal judge?" His face paled. "I thought not. Now, I'm going to give you one opportunity to make this right. Get me a phone, call my clerk at the courthouse, verify my identity, because in approximately," I glanced at the wall clock, 2 hours, "when I don't appear for oral arguments, the U.S. Marshals will start looking for me, and when they find me here, held against my will, everyone involved will be looking at federal charges." But the paperwork. Your son showed power of attorney." "Stepson," I corrected, "and I'd be very interested to see this power of attorney, as I've never signed one." Dr. Hendricks pulled out his phone with shaking hands. "What's the number for your clerk?" 20 minutes later, the facility was in chaos. My clerk, James Chen, had confirmed my identity and status. He'd also informed me that Robert had called that morning, claiming I'd had a medical emergency and would be taking indefinite leave. The FBI was already involved, apparently. Attempting to remove a federal judge from the bench through fraud triggers all sorts of automatic investigations. "Judge Martinez, I cannot apologize enough." Dr. Hendricks stammered. The admission paperwork looked legitimate. They had documents, medical evaluations. "Forged," I said simply. "May I see them?" He handed me a folder with trembling hands. There it was, my supposed signature on power of attorney documents, admission forms, and most damning, a psychiatric evaluation claiming I had advanced dementia. The signature was close, but not perfect. Robert had been practicing. "Who performed this psychiatric evaluation?" I asked. "Dr. Reginald Thompson. He's been our consulting physician for years." "Get him here, now." As we waited, pieces fell into place. Frank had been wealthy, old California money, real estate holdings worth millions. When he died 2 years ago, he'd left everything to me, with his children to inherit upon my death, but they'd grown impatient. Robert's business ventures kept failing. Patricia's husband had expensive tastes. They needed money now, not whenever I had the courtesy to die. "Judge Martinez?" A young doctor appeared at the door, his face cycling through recognition, surprise, and horror. "Oh my God, you're really here." I studied him carefully. Young, Asian, earnest face. "Dr. Liu, Kevin Liu? You remember me?" His voice cracked. "You were my mock trial coach at Berkeley. You wrote my recommendation letter for medical school. what are you doing here? Being evaluated for dementia, apparently, I said dryly, although I suspect you'll find my mental faculties intact. This is insane. You're one of the sharpest legal minds in the country. Just last month, your opinion in the Patterson case was cited by the Supreme Court. Be that as it may, I need you to conduct a thorough evaluation, document everything. We're building a federal case, and I want unimpeachable evidence. Dr. Liu, sweet Kevin Liu, who'd once played a devastating expert witness in our mock trial team's national championship, nodded grimly. Should I call the FBI now or after we document everything? After, I decided. I want the full picture first. The evaluation was thorough. Cognitive tests, memory assessments, physical examination. I passed everything with flying colors. Of course, my blood work showed traces of sedatives but nothing else. Dr. Liu documented everything meticulously, his outrage growing with each test. They didn't even try to make this look legitimate, he muttered. The supposed evaluation by Dr. Thompson claims you couldn't remember your own name or recognize family members. It's dated 3 days ago, but the symptoms described would have taken years to develop. Dr. Thompson was paid well, I'm sure, I said. The question is how much and by whom. That's when things got interesting. The facility's business manager, clearly terrified of the federal investigation bearing down on them, volunteered their financial records. A $50,000 payment had been made just yesterday for my care, a year in advance, non-refundable. Paid from my own account, no doubt, I said. Actually, the manager said, checking the records, it came from the Helen Martinez Trust. That's your trust, right? I felt my blood pressure spike. The Helen Martinez Trust held Frank's entire estate, the houses, the investment accounts, everything. Only I had access to those funds, or so I'd thought. Get me the FBI, I said quietly, now. Special Agent Sarah Chen, no relation to my clerk, arrived within the hour, accompanied by a team that immediately seized all documentation. She was young, sharp, and absolutely thrilled to be handling a case involving judicial kidnapping. Judge Martinez, we've already frozen all accounts associated with your name and the trust, she informed me. Your stepchildren made several large transfers in the last 48 hours. They weren't subtle. How much? Approximately $2 million. They also listed your primary residence for sale and scheduled an estate sale for your personal belongings. Were you aware that you've apparently been declared mentally incompetent by the state of California? I was not aware, as I've been unconscious or imprisoned for the last, I checked the clock, 18 hours, though I'm curious how one gets declared incompetent without appearing before a judge. Agent Chen smiled grimly. That's what we're investigating. The court filings were submitted electronically yesterday. The hearing was supposedly held in absentia due to your violent tendencies and flight risk. Violent tendencies? I laughed. I'm a 68-year-old woman with arthritis. According to the filing, you attacked your stepson with a golf club and threatened to burn down the house. I don't even play golf. The deeper we dug, the more elaborate the scheme became. Robert and Patricia had been planning this for months, forged medical records going back a year, documenting a gradual decline that never happened. Staged incidents with paid witnesses, even a few deepfake videos showing me in various states of confusion, though the quality was poor enough that they wouldn't stand up to scrutiny. They hired someone called the Arranger, Agent Chen explained, showing me encrypted emails they'd recovered. Apparently, there's a whole underground industry devoted to relocating inconvenient relatives. Elder abuse as a service, I said disgustedly. How modern. By evening, I was back home, or what was left of it. Robert and Patricia had worked fast. Furniture was tagged for sale, art was missing from the walls. My late husband's study, which I'd preserved exactly as he'd left it, had been ransacked. I stood in the doorway, surveying the damage, when I heard voices from the kitchen. Can't reach the facility. They were supposed to keep her sedated for at least a week. Patricia's voice, high and stressed. It doesn't matter, Robert replied. The paperwork's filed. She's legally incompetent. Even if she shows up, no one will believe her over the court documents. But what if? What if what? She's a confused old woman who escaped from a nursing home. We'll just have her recommitted. Dr. Thompson will swear she's dangerous. By the time anyone sorts it out, we'll be in Switzerland. I cleared my throat. Switzerland's nice this time of year, but they do have an extradition treaty with the United States. The crash of breaking dishes was deeply satisfying. Robert recovered first, his face cycling through shock, fear, and finally, desperate bravado. Elena, thank God you're okay. When the facility called to say you'd wandered off, Save it, I interrupted. Agent Chin, they're all yours. The FBI agents who'd been waiting outside streamed in. Patricia started crying, huge, theatrical sobs that might have been convincing if I hadn't heard her practicing them in the mirror when she was 16. You can't do this, she wailed. We're family, we were trying to help you. By stealing my money and locking me away? You're sick, Robert insisted, even as they cuffed him. Tell them about the incidents. Tell them about how you've been forgetting things, getting confused. Like that time I forgot Patricia's birthday? I asked. Oh wait, that was last month, and I sent her a card and a check for $5,000. Or when I got confused during Christmas dinner? Except there are 12 witnesses who'll testify I was perfectly lucid while you two got drunk and plotted my finances. This is all a misunderstanding, Patricia pleaded. We can explain. You can explain to a federal judge, Agent Chin said, though probably not this one. Conflict of interest and all. As they were led away, Robert turned back. He never loved you, you know. He just felt guilty about Mom dying. You were just the replacement. I looked at him steadily. Frank loved me for 23 years. He loved you too, which is why I put up with your disrespect, your greed, and your cruelty, but that ends today. You can't prove anything, he spat. Our lawyer says. Your lawyer took a $75,000 retainer from my trust account, I informed him. He's been disbarred as of an hour ago and is also under federal investigation. You might want to look into a public defender. The house felt different after they were gone, emptier, but also cleaner somehow. I walked through the rooms, cataloging what was missing, what was damaged. Things could be replaced. Trust, once broken, could not. My phone rang. Chief Judge Williams. Elena, I just heard. My God, are you all right? I'm fine, Michael, angry, but fine. Take all the time you need. Your cases can be reassigned. I'll be on the bench tomorrow, I said firmly. I have oral arguments at 9. Elena, no one would blame you for taking time. They tried to erase me, Michael, to make me disappear into some warehouse for the inconvenient elderly. The best response is to show up, do my job, and let everyone see that I'm exactly who I've always been. He was quiet for a moment. You're tougher than anyone I know. I had to be, single woman, Latina, in a profession that didn't want me. This is just Tuesday. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse to find it buzzing with gossip. News travels fast in legal circles, and the attempted forced commitment of a federal judge was the scandal of the decade. All rise, the Honorable Judge Elena Martinez presiding. I took my seat, looking out at a packed courtroom. Every lawyer, every clerk, every reporter who could fit had crammed in to see if I'd show up, if I'd be myself. Good morning, I said, my voice clear and strong. Before we begin, I'd like to address the elephant in the room. Yes, there was an incident. No, I do not have dementia. Yes, arrests have been made. No, it will not affect my ability to serve this court. Now, shall we discuss the constitutionality of Section 3 of the Digital Privacy Act, or would you prefer to continue staring? Nervous laughter rippled through the room, and just like that, we were back to business. The trial was swift. Federal kidnapping charges, elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, the list went on. Dr. Thompson, faced with losing his medical license and spending decades in prison, flipped immediately. He revealed an entire network of doctors, lawyers, and facility administrators who specialized in disappearing inconvenient relatives. Robert got 15 years. Patricia got 12. Various co-conspirators received lesser sentences. The facility lost its license. The state overhauled its competency hearing process. But the real victory came 6 months later, when the Elena Martinez Elder Justice Act passed Congress. It established federal oversight for guardianship proceedings, mandatory video recordings of competency hearings, and severe penalties for fraudulent commitment. You turned your trauma into change, Dr. Lou, who'd become a regular lunch companion, said as we watched the president sign the bill. That's incredible. It's what we do, I replied. We take the worst things that happen to us and try to make sure they don't happen to anyone else. That's the whole point of law, to make tomorrow better than today. The trust money was recovered. Mostly, the house was put back together. I even bought new art, brighter pieces that didn't remind me of Frank's children. But I also made changes. Cameras throughout the house, a security system that would make Fort Knox jealous, regular check-ins with trusted friends, and a new will that left everything to charity, with a special note explaining why Frank's children would receive nothing but this story as their inheritance. One day, about a year later, I received a letter, prison mail, From Patricia. Elena. I know I have no right to write to you. I know what we did was unforgivable, but I wanted you to know that I think about it every day, not just because I'm in prison, but because I finally understand what we tried to do to you. There's an elderly woman here, sentenced for check fraud. Her children visit her every week, even though she stole from them. They love her anyway. Watching them, I realized what we threw away. Not money or houses, but the chance to have someone who would visit us when we're old and frightened and locked away. You tried to be family to us. We chose to be criminals instead. I'm sorry doesn't begin to cover it, but I'm sorry anyway. Patricia*. I read it twice, then filed it away. Some bridges, once burned, illuminated truth in their flames. Patricia and Robert had shown me who they were. The greater tragedy was that they'd shown themselves too. I'm 70 now, still sharp, still serving on the bench, still living in my too-big house with its state-of-the-art security system. Sometimes I think about Frank, about how horrified he would have been by his children's actions, but mostly I think about the thousands of elderly people who disappear into facilities every year, whose families declare them incompetent to steal their assets, whose voices are silenced by a system that too often values efficiency over justice. Every morning, I put on my robes and walk into court, visible proof that age doesn't equal incompetence, that vulnerability doesn't invite victimization, that sometimes the people who try to erase you only end up underlining your importance. The gavel comes down, justice is served, and somewhere in a federal prison, two people learn that the only thing worse than being forgotten is being remembered for all the wrong reasons. Court is now in session, I announce, my voice echoing through the halls of justice where it was almost silenced forever. Let's begin.
Pack your things, Hadley. You have 2 weeks. My mother's words hit me like a slap across the face as I stood in the kitchen doorway, still holding the grocery bags I'd just carried in. The same kitchen where I'd made breakfast for this family every morning for the past 3 years while taking care of Grandma Melanie upstairs. My name is Hadley, and I'm 28 years old. I've been the invisible daughter in this house for as long as I can remember. What do you mean, pack my things? I set the bags down carefully, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. Dad looked up from his newspaper, not even bothering to make eye contact. We're selling the house, sweetheart. Cadence needs the money for her new apartment in the city, and, well, he shrugged like he was discussing the weather. It's time you figured things out on your own. Cadence bounced into the kitchen then, her blonde hair perfectly curled, designer purse slung over her shoulder. At 24, she'd never worked a day in her life, but somehow she was the one who deserved a financial head start. Oh, good. You told her? Cadence beamed at our parents. I already found the most amazing loft downtown. It has exposed brick and everything. The deposit alone is $15,000, but Daddy says that's no problem, right? Of course not, Princess. Dad folded his paper and smiled at her with the warmth he'd never once shown me. Your happiness is worth everything. I watched this exchange like I was viewing it through glass. 28 years of being the responsible one. 28 years of cleaning up their messes, taking care of Grandma when she got sick, working 2 jobs to help with household expenses while Cadence spent money on clothes and trips with friends. The realtor says we can close in 3 weeks, Mom chimed in, finally looking at me. The Sheltons are a lovely family. They have a teenage daughter who'll just love Grandma's old room. Grandma's room. The room where I'd spent countless hours reading to her, bringing her meals, helping her with her medications, while everyone else was too busy to care. The room where she died 6 months ago, holding my hand and whispering things I thought were just the ramblings of a dying woman. Where exactly am I supposed to go? I asked. Mom waved her hand dismissively. You're almost 30, Hadley. Surely you can figure out an apartment or something. Maybe get a roommate. With what money? I've been using my savings to help with Grandma's medical bills and the house expenses. That was your choice, Cadence said, examining her manicured nails. Nobody asked you to play martyr. The word martyr hung in the air like poison. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. I see. I picked up the grocery bags again. Well, I guess I better start looking for a place then. That's the spirit. Dad actually smiled at me for the first time in months. I knew you'd understand. Family has to stick together, and Cadence is just starting her life. I nodded and headed upstairs, my footsteps echoing in the hallway. Behind me, I could hear Cadence already on the phone with someone, squealing about her new apartment and how her parents were literally the best ever. In my room, the smallest bedroom in the house, the one I'd been given because Cadence needs more space for her things, I sat on my bed and stared at the wall. The same wall I'd stared at through countless nights of feeling invisible, unwanted, forgotten. But as I sat there, something Grandma had said came back to me. It was during one of her lucid moments near the end, when she'd gripped my hand with surprising strength. "Always keep your own keys, darling," she'd whispered. "Sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones you need protection from." I'd thought she was talking about door keys, maybe worried about me being locked out. But now, I walked to her old room, the one Mom had already started clearing out for the lovely Shelton family. In the corner sat Grandma's antique cedar chest, the one Mom had said I could keep, since no one else wants that old thing. I knelt beside it and lifted the heavy lid. Underneath her quilts and photo albums, my fingers found what I was looking for, a manila envelope with my name written in Grandma's careful script, "For Hadley only." Inside was a letter and several official-looking documents. As I read, my hands began to shake. The house wasn't my parents' to sell. It never had been. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table reading Grandma's letter for the 5th time when Mom walked in wearing her bathrobe and that pinched expression she got when things weren't going her way. "You're up early," she said, eyeing the papers spread in front of me. "What's all that?" "Just some of Grandma's old documents." I folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. "Thought I should go through everything before I move out." "Good. The sooner you get organized, the better." She poured herself coffee and sat across from me. "Cadence is coming by later to measure her new loft. She wants to make sure her furniture will fit." "How nice for her." Mom's eyes narrowed. "Don't use that tone with me, Hadley. We're doing what's best for this family." "Right. Of course you are." Before she could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from my friend Vivian. "Coffee in 20? You sounded weird on the phone last night." I stood up, gathering the papers. "I'm going out for a while." "Don't forget you have boxes to pack," Mom called after me. 20 minutes later, I slid into the booth across from Vivienne at our usual coffee shop. She took one look at my face and leaned forward. "Okay, spill. What did your family do now?" "They're kicking me out, selling the house to give Cadence money for her new apartment." Vivian's jaw dropped. "They're what? Hadley, you've been taking care of that house for years. You paid for half the repairs when the roof leaked. "I know." I pulled out the envelope. "But there's something else." I showed her Grandma's letter and the deed. Vivian read in silence, her eyes getting wider with each line. "Holy shit," she whispered. "Your grandmother left you the house? The whole house?" "Apparently she transferred ownership to me 2 years ago. Had it all done legally, notarized, filed with the county. My parents have no idea." "So they're trying to sell property they don't own. That's fraud, isn't it?" Vivian pulled out her phone. "My cousin Jake is a real estate lawyer. I'm calling him right now." While she made the call, I watched through the window as normal families walked by. Parents with kids, couples holding hands, people who probably didn't scheme against each other or throw family members out on the street. "Jake says you need to get to the county recorder's office today," Vivian said, hanging up. "Verify everything is properly filed. He also says—" She paused. "He says your parents could face serious legal consequences for this." "Good." The word came out harder than I'd intended. Vivian raised an eyebrow. "Hadley, I get that you're angry, but do you? Do you really get it?" I leaned forward. "I spent 3 years caring for Grandma while they acted like she was a burden. I worked 2 jobs to help with expenses while Cadence got a brand new car for her birthday. I've been invisible in that house my entire life, and now they want to throw me out so their precious princess can have a loft with exposed brick. I know, but Grandma knew. She saw how they treated me, and she made sure I'd be okay. She left me the one thing that mattered most to her. Vivian was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do? I'm going to let them dig their own grave. We spent the next hour at the county office. The clerk, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, pulled up the records on her computer. Yep, here it is. Property transferred to Hadley Thompson 2 years ago. All legal and proper. She looked at me over her glasses. You're the sole owner, honey. Has been for a while now. What if someone tried to sell this property without my knowledge? Patricia's expression darkened. That would be fraud. Big-time fraud. You'd want to contact the police and probably a lawyer. Back at the house, I found Cadence in the living room with a measuring tape, talking loudly on her phone. The couch will go perfectly by the windows, she was saying, and I'm thinking of getting one of those fancy coffee machines for the kitchen, the kind that costs like $2,000. She noticed me and covered her phone. Where have you been? Mom said you were supposed to be packing. I was handling some business. We'll handle it faster. The realtor is bringing the buyers by tomorrow for a final walkthrough. I nodded and headed upstairs. In my room, I pulled out my laptop and started researching tenant rights, property law, and fraud penalties. Every article I read made my resolve stronger. Around dinner time, Dad knocked on my door. Hadley, can we talk? I opened the door to find him standing there with an expression I'd never seen before, almost guilty. I know this is hard, he said, but you understand why we have to do this, right? Cadence has her whole life ahead of her. And I don't? That's not what I meant. You're stronger than she is. You've always been able to take care of yourself. I stared at him for a long moment. You're right, Dad. I am stronger than she is. He smiled, missing the edge in my voice completely. I knew you'd understand. After he left, I sat on my bed and opened Grandma's letter one more time. At the bottom, in her shaky handwriting, she'd added a postscript. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people show the world who they really are. Tomorrow, they'd get their chance. The doorbell rang at exactly 10 a.m. I watched from the kitchen window as a silver SUV pulled into our driveway, followed by a sleek black sedan. "They're here!" Mom called out, her voice pitched high with excitement. She'd been up since 6, cleaning surfaces that were already spotless and arranging flowers she'd bought specifically for this walkthrough. The front door opened, and I heard Dad's booming voice. "Welcome, welcome! Come right in!" I stayed in the kitchen pretending to wash dishes while listening to the introductions. The Sheltons sounded exactly like the kind of family my parents would want to impress. Polite, well-spoken, financially secure. "This is our daughter Maeve," a woman's voice said. "She's 14 and absolutely loves the room upstairs. The one with the window seat?" "Grandma's room," Mom said warmly. "It gets the most beautiful morning light." My grip tightened on the plate I was washing. "And this is Weston, our agent," a man's voice added. "He's been handling everything for us." "Pleasure to meet you all," Dad said. "Let me give you the grand tour." They moved through the house like a parade, Mom and Dad pointing out features and upgrades while the Sheltons made appreciative noises. I could hear Cadence's voice chiming in occasionally, playing the role of helpful daughter. "The kitchen was just renovated 3 years ago," Mom was saying as they approached. "Hadley, come meet the Sheltons." I turned around, drying my hands on a towel. The family looked exactly as I'd imagined. Dad in a crisp polo shirt, Mom in designer jeans, teenage daughter with perfect teeth and an expensive phone case. "This is our older daughter," Dad said, his tone notably cooler than when he'd introduced Cadence. "She's been helping us get ready for the move." "How nice," Mrs. Shelton said politely. "Are you excited about your family's new chapter?" "Absolutely thrilled," I replied, my voice perfectly neutral. The agent, Weston, was studying me with sharp eyes. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with the kind of calculating expression that came from years of reading people in high-stakes transactions. "Will you be moving with your family?" he asked. "Oh, no!" Cadence jumped in before I could answer. "Hadley's finally getting her own place. She's been living here way too long." She laughed like it was a joke, but there was an edge to it. The Sheltons looked uncomfortable. "Well," Mr. Shelton cleared his throat, "should we continue the tour?" They moved upstairs, and I followed at a distance. In Grandma's room, Mrs. Shelton was running her hands along the window seat, where Grandma used to sit and watch the birds. "This room has such character," she said. "Maeve, can you picture your desk right here by the window?" The teenage girl nodded enthusiastically. "It's perfect, Mom. Way better than my room at the old house." "The previous owner took excellent care of this space, Talal," Dad said. "My mother-in-law lived here for her final years. Very peaceful." I watched Weston examining the crown molding, the hardwood floors, the built-in bookshelves. His attention to detail was impressive. "The inspection went smoothly?" he asked Dad. "Clean as a whistle. No issues whatsoever." "And the title search?" "All clear. We've owned this house for 32 years. I felt a smile tug at the corner of my mouth. Weston caught it and frowned slightly. Back downstairs, the Sheltons gathered in the living room, while Weston pulled out a thick folder of documents. "Everything looks good," he said. "We're still on track for closing next Friday?" "Absolutely," Dad said, shaking his hand firmly. "We'll have everything ready." "Wonderful," Mrs. Shelton beamed. "Maeve, why don't you take some pictures for your friends?" As the teenager started snapping photos, Cadence pulled out her own phone. "This is so exciting," she said, starting to record a video. "Last walkthrough before we sell the family home. It's bittersweet, but we're so ready for this new adventure." She panned the camera around the room, catching Mom wiping away a theatrical tear and Dad looking proud and paternal. "Some people might think it's crazy to give up such a beautiful house," Cadence continued to her phone. "But family comes first, right? Sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the people you love." I almost laughed out loud. After the Sheltons left, the house felt electric with anticipation. Mom immediately started calling relatives to share the news, while Dad poured himself a celebratory scotch, even though it wasn't even noon yet. "I can't believe it's really happening," Cadence said, collapsing dramatically on the couch. "I'm going to miss this place, but I'm so ready for my new life." "You deserve it, sweetheart," Mom said, stroking her hair. "You've worked so hard." I excused myself and went upstairs to make a phone call. "Jake, it's Hadley, Vivian's friend. I need to move fast on that legal advice you gave me." "What's the timeline?" "They're closing on Friday. That gives me 5 days." "That's cutting it close, but doable. You'll need to file a restraining order against the sale and notify all parties involved. I can have the paperwork ready by tomorrow." "Do it." "Hadley, are you sure about this? Once you pull this trigger, there's no going back. Your family relationships will never be the same." I looked out the window at the garden where Grandma used to sit, where she'd taught me to plant roses and told me stories about her own difficult family. "They made that choice when they decided to steal from me," I said. "I'm just making sure they face the consequences." Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel possible. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and watching my parents buzz around like excited children on Christmas morning. "The signing is at 2, Dad announced for the 3rd time, adjusting his tie. "Weston said it should take about an hour, then we can celebrate." "I still can't believe this is really happening," Mom said, checking her lipstick and her phone camera. 32 years in this house, and now we're giving Cadence the fresh start she deserves." Cadence bounced down the stairs in a designer dress I'd never seen before. "I bought this specifically for today," she said, twirling. "It's going to look amazing in all the photos." "Photos?" I asked. "For my Instagram, obviously. This is like a major life moment. I'm going to document everything." She held up her phone, already recording. Good morning, beautiful people. Today's the day we officially sell the family home. I'm literally shaking with excitement. She panned the camera toward our parents, who waved enthusiastically. And there's my sister Hadley in the background, Cadence added, not bothering to include me in the frame. She's been super supportive through this whole process. I raised my coffee mug in a mock toast. At noon, I excused myself to run errands. Instead, I drove to Jake's law office downtown, where he handed me a manila envelope thick with legal documents. Everything's in order, he said. The restraining order against the sale, copies of the deed proving your ownership, and a cease and desist letter for your parents. The county clerk has been notified, and I've sent copies to the title company. What happens when they try to sign? The title company won't be able to proceed. They'll discover the property isn't legally your parents' to sell. Jake leaned back in his chair. Hadley, I have to ask one more time. Are you absolutely certain about this? They've had every opportunity to treat me like family. Instead, they chose to commit fraud. All right then, the papers are served as of now. Good luck. I drove back home and parked across the street, watching through the living room window as my family prepared for their big moment. Dad was pacing, Mom was fussing with her hair, and Cadence was taking selfies on the couch. At 1:30, they piled into Dad's car, laughing and chattering like they were heading to a party. I waited until they disappeared around the corner, then went inside and called Vivian. It's done, I told her. They're walking into the signing right now with no idea what's waiting for them. How do you feel? Ask me in a few hours. I spent the afternoon cleaning Grandma's room, carefully dusting her photographs and organizing her books. At 4 p.m., my phone started ringing. Dad's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then Mom called. Voicemail. Cadence called 3 times in a row. Voicemail, voicemail, voicemail. Finally, I listened to Dad's message. Hadley, there's been some kind of mistake at the title company. They're saying there's a problem with the deed. Call me back immediately. Mom's message was more frantic. Hadley, where are you? We need you to come down here right now. Something's wrong with the paperwork. Cadence's messages got progressively more hysterical. Hadley, what the hell is going on? The lawyers are saying crazy things about ownership and fraud. This isn't funny anymore. Call me back. At 5 p.m., I heard Dad's car in the driveway. Car doors slammed, and then the front door burst open. Hadley! Dad's voice boomed through the house. Get down here right now. I walked downstairs to find all 3 of them standing in the living room, looking like they'd been through a tornado. Dad's tie was askew, Mom's makeup was smudged, and Cadence looked like she'd been crying. There you are, Mom said, her voice shaking. Where have you been? We've been trying to reach you for hours. I was out. What's wrong? You all look upset. Dad stepped forward, his face red with anger and confusion. The title company says there's a problem with the deed. They're claiming we don't own this house. That's ridiculous, I said calmly. Of course you own it. You've lived here for 32 years. That's what we told them, Cadence exploded. But they have all these documents saying the house belongs to you. It's completely insane. To me? I blinked innocently. That doesn't make any sense. The lawyers are saying Grandma transferred ownership to you 2 years ago, Mom said, her voice barely above a whisper. They're saying the sale can't go through because we were trying to sell property that isn't ours. They used the word fraud, Dad added, sinking into his chair. They said we could face criminal charges. I looked at each of their faces, the confusion, the fear, the dawning realization that their perfect plan had just exploded in their faces. Well, I said, sitting down across from them, I suppose we should talk. I pulled out the manila envelope and set it on the coffee table. Grandma left me something before she died. I found it after you told me to pack my things. Dad reached for the envelope with trembling hands. As he read Grandma's letter, his face went from red to white to gray. She knew, he whispered. She knew what we were planning to do. Apparently, she knew you better than you knew yourselves, I said. Cadence grabbed the deed, scanning it frantically. This can't be legal. She was old, she was sick, she didn't know what she was doing. Actually, she had it done 2 years ago when she was perfectly lucid, all properly notarized and filed with the county. The room fell silent except for the sound of Mom's quiet sobbing. So, I continued, it looks like you just tried to sell my house. Saturday morning, I woke up to the sound of a moving truck rumbling down our street. I looked out my bedroom window and watched it pull into our driveway, followed by the Shelton silver SUV. My phone had been buzzing all night with increasingly desperate messages from my family, but I'd turned it off around midnight. Now I powered it back on to find 17 missed calls and a string of texts that ranged from pleading to threatening. Dad, we need to fix this. Call me. Mom, Hadley, please. The Sheltons are expecting to move in today. We can work something out. Cadence, you're destroying my entire future. How can you be so selfish? I got dressed and walked downstairs to find my parents huddled at the kitchen table, looking like they hadn't slept. Empty coffee cups and crumpled tissues littered the surface. Thank God, Mom said when she saw me. We need to talk. I'm listening. Dad cleared his throat. The Sheltons are here. They've rented a truck, hired movers, the whole 9 yards. We need to figure out how to handle this. Handle what? Don't play dumb, Hadley, Cadence snapped, appearing in the doorway. Her designer dress from yesterday was wrinkled, and her perfect makeup was long gone. You know exactly what you've done. Through the window, I could see Weston talking animatedly on his phone while Mr. Shelton directed the movers toward the house. Mrs. Shelton and Maeve stood on the sidewalk looking confused. The doorbell rang. I'll get it, I said, walking to the front door. Weston stood on the porch with the Sheltons, all of them wearing expressions that ranged from frustrated to furious. Miss Thompson? Weston's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. We need to discuss the situation with this property. Of course. Please come in. I led them to the living room where my parents and Cadence were waiting. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Someone needs to explain what the hell is going on, Mr. Shelton said, his polite demeanor from yesterday completely gone. We've spent thousands of dollars on this move, and now we're being told the sale is invalid? Dad stood up, his hands shaking slightly. There's been a misunderstanding about the ownership of the property. We're working to resolve it. A misunderstanding? Mrs. Shelton's voice pitched higher. We have a signed contract. We've already given notice at our old house. Our daughter has told all her friends about her new school. Maeve, the 14-year-old, looked like she was about to cry. Are we not moving into the house with the window seat? That's what we're trying to figure out, sweetheart, her mother said, shooting a venomous look at my parents. Weston pulled out his phone. I've been in contact with the title company all morning. They've confirmed that the property legally belongs to Hadley Thompson, not Rebecca and Anthony Thompson. The sale cannot proceed. All eyes turned to me. I sat down in Grandma's favorite armchair, the one by the window where she used to watch the birds. That's correct, I said calmly. My grandmother transferred ownership to me 2 years ago. I have all the documentation. But they signed a contract to sell, Mr. Shelton exploded. They took our earnest money. Actually, Weston said, checking his notes, they signed a contract to sell property they don't legally own. That constitutes fraud. The word fraud hit the room like a bomb. Mom started crying again, and Dad sank back into his chair. This is insane, Cadence said, pulling out her phone. I'm calling the police. This has to be illegal somehow. Go ahead, I said. I'm sure they'll be very interested in hearing about how you tried to sell someone else's house. Weston was typing rapidly on his phone. My clients have grounds for a lawsuit. They've suffered significant financial damages due to this fraudulent sale. Now wait just a minute, Dad said, finding his voice. We had no idea the ownership had changed. This was an honest mistake. An honest mistake? Mrs. Shelton stood up, her face flushed with anger. We trusted you people. We uprooted our entire lives based on your lies." "We weren't lying," Mom protested. "We lived here for 32 years. How were we supposed to know?" I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Actually, you did know." I handed the paper to Dad. It was a copy of the certified letter the county had sent 2 years ago, notifying the previous owners of record about the property transfer. "This was delivered to this address," I said. "Someone signed for it." Dad's face went white as he stared at the signature on the receipt. His own signature. "You knew," Weston said, his voice deadly quiet. "You knew the property had been transferred, and you tried to sell it anyway." The room erupted in chaos. The Sheltons started shouting about lawsuits and criminal charges. Cadence was screaming at me about ruining her life. Mom was sobbing into her hands. Through it all, I sat perfectly still in Grandma's chair, watching the family that had thrown me away finally face the consequences of their actions. "I want everyone out of my house," I said, my voice cutting through the noise. The room fell silent. "This is my property," I continued, standing up. "Mr. and Mrs. Shelton, I'm sorry you were deceived by my parents, but you need to leave. Weston, I suggest you contact your lawyer about pursuing damages from the people who actually committed fraud." I walked to the front door and opened it wide. "Everyone out! Now!" As the Sheltons filed past me, Mrs. Shelton paused. "I hope you're proud of yourself," she hissed. "You've destroyed a family's dreams." "No," I replied. "I've just stopped letting mine be destroyed." The movers were already loading their truck back up, shaking their heads and muttering about crazy clients. Neighbors had started gathering on their porches, drawn by the commotion. My parents and Cadence stood in the doorway, looking lost and broken. "Where are we supposed to go?" Mom whispered. I looked at the 3 people who had spent my entire life making me feel unwanted and unwelcome. "I honestly don't care," I said, and closed the door. By Monday morning, my phone was ringing nonstop. The first call came from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Hadley Thompson? This is Jennifer Martinez from Channel 7 News. We'd like to speak with you about the property fraud case involving your family." I hung up and immediately got another call. "Hadley Thompson? This is Brad from the morning show. We heard about your story and—" I turned off my phone and made coffee, but 20 minutes later, someone was knocking on my door. Through the peephole, I saw a woman with a microphone and a man with a camera. "Ms. Thompson, we're from Channel 12. Can we get a statement about the fraudulent house sale?" I didn't answer, but they didn't leave either. Soon, there were 3 news vans parked on my street, and neighbors were coming out to see what was happening. My phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. "Holy shit, you're on the news. Call me." I turned on the TV and flipped to the local news channel. There was my house on the screen, with a reporter standing on my front lawn. What started as a routine home sale has turned into a shocking case of family betrayal and property fraud. The Thompson family attempted to sell their home to give their younger daughter money for a new apartment, but they had one problem: they didn't actually own the house. The screen switched to footage of the Sheltons from Saturday, clearly filmed while they were loading their truck back up. "We trusted them completely," Mrs. Shelton was saying, tears streaming down her face. "We've lost our deposit, our moving costs, everything. Our daughter was supposed to start at her new school next week." Then Cadence appeared on screen, and I nearly choked on my coffee. She was standing in our driveway, makeup perfect, speaking directly to the camera, like she was giving an interview. "This whole thing is just a misunderstanding," she was saying. "My sister is going through a difficult time right now, and I think she's acting out of hurt feelings. We're a loving family, and we'll work through this together." The reporter's voice continued. "But legal documents show that the property was legally transferred to Hadley Thompson 2 years ago by her grandmother, and that her parents were notified of this transfer. The Shelton family has retained legal counsel and may pursue criminal charges." My doorbell rang again. This time it was my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, holding a casserole dish. "Honey, I brought you some dinner," she said, pushing past me into the kitchen. "I can't believe what those parents of yours tried to do. Mrs. Patterson, you don't need to—" "Don't you Mrs. Patterson me. I've lived next door for 15 years, and I watched you take care of your grandmother while the rest of them acted like she was a burden." She set the casserole on the counter with a bang. "Your grandmother was a saint, and she knew exactly what she was doing when she left you this house." Before I could respond, my phone started ringing. This time it was Dad. "Hadley, you need to make this stop." "Make what stop?" "The reporters, the news stories, all of it. Cadence can't even leave her apartment without someone shoving a microphone in her face." Maybe she should have thought about that before she decided to document everything for social media. "This isn't a joke. Do you have any idea what this is doing to our family?" "Our family?" I laughed. "Dad, you threw me out of the house to give my inheritance to Cadence. What family? We can fix this. We can work something out. Just talk to the reporters. Tell them it was all a misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding. You tried to steal my house." The line went quiet for a moment. Then, "Fine, but when the lawyers get involved, don't come crying to us." He hung up, and immediately my phone rang again. This time it was a number with a law firm's name on the caller ID. "Ms. Thompson, this is Patricia Wells from Wells, Martinez and Associates. We represent the Shelton family. We need to discuss your parents' fraudulent actions and the damages our clients have suffered." "I'm not responsible for what my parents did." "We understand that. In fact, we'd like to discuss the possibility of you serving as a witness in our case against them. Are you available to meet this week?" After I hung up, I sat in Grandma's chair and looked around the living room. The house felt different now, quieter, but also somehow lighter, like a weight had been lifted. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You ruined everything. I hope you're happy." C. Then another. "The whole family is talking about what a vindictive bitch you are." C. And another. "You'll never have anyone who loves you. You'll die alone in that house, just like Grandma did." C. I blocked the number and made myself a sandwich. As I was eating, someone knocked on the door again. This time it was Weston, the real estate agent, looking haggard and exhausted. "Can I come in? I think we need to talk." I let him in, and he sat heavily on the couch. "This whole thing has been a nightmare," he said. "I've been selling houses for 12 years, and I've never seen anything like this. I'm sorry you got caught up in it. The Sheltons are talking about suing everyone, your parents, me, the title company. Their lawyer says they have a solid case for fraud damages." "Good. My parents need to face consequences for what they did." Weston studied my face. "You're not going to try to help them, are you?" "Why would I?" "Because they're your family." I looked at him for a long moment. "Family doesn't try to steal from each other, Weston. Family doesn't throw you out on the street to benefit their favorite child. What my parents did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice." He nodded slowly. "The Sheltons asked me to give you this." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter from Mrs. Shelton, written in careful handwriting. "Hadley, we don't blame you for what happened. We blame your parents for their deception. We hope you find peace in your grandmother's house. She must have loved you very much. The Shelton family." For the first time since this whole thing started, I felt tears prick my eyes. "Tell them thank you," I said. After Weston left, I sat in the quiet house and realized something. For the first time in my life, I was completely alone, and I wasn't afraid. 3 weeks later, I sat in the courthouse waiting room, watching my parents huddle with their lawyer at the far end of the bench. Dad kept glancing at me with a mixture of anger and something that might have been regret. Mom hadn't looked at me once. Cadence sat between them, scrolling through her phone with the kind of manic energy that came from desperation. Her Instagram had been flooded with comments after the story went viral, and not the kind she was used to receiving. "Thompson versus Shelton. the bailiff called. "Courtroom 3." We filed in like mourners at a funeral. The Sheltons sat with their lawyer on one side, my parents on the other. I was called as a witness, so I sat in the designated area, feeling like I was watching a play about someone else's life. Judge Martinez, a stern woman in her 50s, reviewed the case file with the kind of expression that suggested she'd seen every type of human stupidity imaginable. "This is a civil case for damages resulting from fraudulent property sale," she announced. "Mr. Patterson, you represent the plaintiffs?" The Sheltons' lawyer stood up. "Yes, Your Honor. My clients suffered significant financial damages when the defendants attempted to sell property they did not legally own." "And Ms. Rodriguez, you represent the defendants?" My parents' lawyer, a nervous-looking woman who kept shuffling papers, nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. We maintain this was an honest mistake, not intentional fraud. Let's hear the evidence." For the next hour, I watched the case unfold like a slow-motion car crash. The Sheltons' lawyer presented the signed contract, the earnest money receipt, the moving expenses, the costs of temporary housing while they searched for a new home. "Your Honor," he said, "the defendants not only attempted to sell property they didn't own, but they did so knowing they weren't the legal owners. We have evidence that Mr. Thompson signed for the certified letter notifying him of the property transfer 2 years ago." He held up the receipt with Dad's signature. Dad's face went gray. "Furthermore," the lawyer continued, "the defendant's daughter posted videos on social media documenting their excitement about the sale proceeds, showing this was a deliberate attempt to profit from property that belonged to someone else." They played a clip from Cadence's Instagram story, the one where she talked about her new apartment and how her parents were literally the best ever for selling the house to fund her dreams. Cadence sank lower in her seat as her own words played back in the courtroom. When it was my parents' lawyer's turn, she stood up with visible reluctance. "Your Honor, my clients lived in this house for 32 years. They had no reason to believe the ownership had changed. The transfer was done without their knowledge by an elderly woman who may not have fully understood the implications of her actions." "Objection," the Sheltons' lawyer said immediately. "The grandmother was evaluated by 2 doctors and found to be of sound mind when she executed the transfer. We have the medical records." "Sustained," Judge Martinez said. "Ms. Rodriguez, do you have any evidence that your clients were unaware of the ownership transfer?" My parents' lawyer shuffled through her papers. "Well, Your Honor, that is to say—" "I'll take that as a no. Ms. Thompson, please approach the witness stand." I walked to the front of the courtroom, feeling everyone's eyes on me. After being sworn in, the Sheltons' lawyer asked me to explain what had happened. "My grandmother transferred the house to me 2 years ago," I said, my voice steady. "She told me she wanted to make sure I was taken care of because she could see how my family treated me." "Did your parents know about this transfer?" "Yes. The county sent a certified letter to the house. My father signed for it." "What happened when your parents decided to sell the house?" I looked directly at my parents as I answered. "They told me I had 2 weeks to pack my things and move out. They said they were selling the house to give the money to my sister for her new apartment." "Did they ask if you wanted to buy the house from them?" "No. They didn't even tell me they were planning to sell until after they'd already made the decision." "Did they offer you any portion of the sale proceeds?" "No. They said it was all going to my sister." Cadence was crying now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage and humiliation. My parents' lawyer tried to cross-examine me, but there wasn't much she could do. The facts were the facts. "Ms. Thompson," she said, "don't you think your grandmother's decision to transfer the house without telling your parents was unfair? My grandmother spent her final years watching my parents treat me like I was invisible while they doted on my sister. She made her decision based on what she observed. But surely family should stick together." "Family should stick together," I agreed. But my parents chose to throw me out of the house to benefit their favorite child. They made their choice about what family meant to them. When the testimony was over, Judge Martinez didn't need long to deliberate. "The evidence is clear," she said. The defendants knowingly attempted to sell property they did not own, causing significant financial harm to the plaintiffs. I award the Shelton family $47,000 in damages, plus court costs. Dad's face went white. Mom started crying. Cadence looked like she was going to be sick. Furthermore, the judge continued, I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for possible criminal prosecution. As we filed out of the courtroom, Mom finally looked at me. I hope you're satisfied, she said, her voice broken. You've destroyed your own family. No, I replied. You destroyed it when you decided to steal from me. I just made sure there were consequences. Outside the courthouse, the Sheltons' lawyer approached me. Ms. Thompson, my clients wanted me to thank you for your testimony. They know this couldn't have been easy. It was the right thing to do. There's one more thing, he said. Your parents don't have $47,000. They're going to have to sell assets, possibly declare bankruptcy. Are you prepared for that? I looked back at the courthouse steps, where my parents stood with their lawyer, looking defeated and lost. They made their choice, I said. Now they get to live with it. The eviction notice arrived on a Tuesday morning in December. I found it slipped under my door, along with a letter from a law firm I didn't recognize. Ms. Thompson, our clients, Rebecca and Anthony Thompson, are facing financial hardship due to recent legal judgments. They are requesting to rent the basement apartment in the property at... I set the letter aside and made coffee. Through the kitchen window, I could see Mrs. Patterson hanging Christmas lights on her porch. She waved when she spotted me, and I waved back. My phone rang. Dad's number. Hadley, did you get the letter? I got it. We're losing the apartment, the judgment, the legal fees. We can't make rent anymore. I waited for him to continue. The basement has its own entrance, he said, his voice carefully controlled. We wouldn't bother you. We'd pay rent, of course. Whatever you think is fair. How much can you afford? We were thinking maybe $200 a month? I almost laughed. The basement apartment could easily rent for $800 in this neighborhood. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up. That afternoon, Vivian came over with Chinese takeout and wine. So, she said, settling into Grandma's chair, are you going to let them move into the basement? I don't know. Part of me thinks they deserve to figure it out on their own. And the other part? The other part remembers that they're still my parents, even if they're terrible ones. Vivian opened the wine. What would your grandmother want you to do? I considered this while we ate. Grandma had been tough but fair. She'd never let anyone take advantage of her, but she'd also never kicked someone when they were down. She'd probably say that revenge is a dish best served cold, but mercy is what separates us from animals. Sounds like her. The next morning I called Dad back. You can rent the basement, I said, but there are conditions. Anything. Name it. First, it's $500 a month, not $200. That's still below market rate. Okay. Second, you pay first and last month's rent up front, plus a security deposit. No exceptions. We don't have that kind of money right now. Then you don't have an apartment right now. Figure it out. Hadley, please. Third, there's a lease. You break any terms, you're out immediately. No family discounts, no second chances. He was quiet for a long moment. What are the terms? No guests without permission. No loud music or TV after 10 p.m. You maintain the space and pay for any damages. And most importantly, I paused. You don't contact Cadence while you're living here. What? Why? Because I'm tired of listening to her poison you against me. If you want to live in my house, you don't get to plot with her about how terrible I am. She's our daughter, and I'm your daughter too. But you've spent the last 6 months letting her turn this whole situation into a social media campaign about what a monster I am. If you want my help, that stops now. Another long pause. Fine, we agree to your terms. I'll have the lease drawn up. They moved in on a Saturday. I watched from my kitchen window as they carried their belongings down the basement stairs, A few suitcases, some boxes, not much else. They'd lost almost everything in the judgment and bankruptcy. Mom knocked on my door that evening. "I wanted to thank you," she said, not quite meeting my eyes, "for letting us stay." "You're welcome. I also wanted to—" She took a shaky breath. "I wanted to apologize for how we treated you, for what we tried to do." I studied her face. She looked older, more fragile than I remembered. "I spent so many years thinking Cadence needed more help because she was less capable," she continued, "but really, I think I just loved her more because she was easier to love, and that wasn't fair to you." "No, it wasn't. I don't expect you to forgive us, but I want you to know that I see now what we did wrong." I nodded. "Thank you for saying that." She started to leave, then turned back. "Your grandmother would be proud of you, you know, the way you handled all this. You could have destroyed us completely, but you didn't." After she left, I sat in Grandma's chair and looked around the living room. The house felt different now, not empty exactly, but peaceful, like it had finally settled into what it was meant to be. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I know you made Mom and Dad choose between us. You're a manipulative bitch, and I hope you rot in that house alone. See." I blocked the number and deleted the message. Outside, snow was starting to fall, dusting the garden where Grandma used to sit. I could hear the faint sound of the TV from the basement apartment, my parents settling into their new reality. This house had seen 3 generations of family drama, love, loss, and betrayal. But it had also seen forgiveness, second chances, and the kind of quiet strength that comes from knowing your own worth. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. I was home, and for the first time in my life, no one could take that away from me. The house was mine, and I was finally, truly free.
The moment my mother said, "We need you to sell your house," I knew my life was about to change forever. My name is Violet, and I'm 32 years old. I've spent most of those years being the family's designated problem solver, the one who swoops in when everyone else's poor decisions come home to roost. But that Tuesday evening in March, sitting in my parents' living room with foreclosure notices scattered across the coffee table like confetti from hell, I finally reached my breaking point. "Violet, honey, you have to understand," Mom continued, her voice taking on that familiar wheedling tone I'd heard 1,000 times before. "This isn't just about us. This is about family." Dad sat slumped in his recliner, avoiding eye contact. My younger brother Everett perched on the edge of the couch, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Which was rich, considering this whole mess was his fault. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "You want me to sell the house I've spent 5 years renovating, the house I bought with my own money, to bail you out of a foreclosure that happened because you invested your retirement savings in Everett's cryptocurrency startup?" "It wasn't just cryptocurrency," Everett mumbled. "It was a whole fintech platform." "That lost every penny," I cut him off. "Every single penny." Mom's face crumpled in that practiced way that used to make me cave immediately. "Violet, we raised you. We sacrificed for you. Don't you think you owe us something?" The laugh that escaped me was harsh and bitter. "Sacrificed for me? Mom, you made me get a job at 14 to pay for my own school clothes while Everett got designer everything. You used my college fund to pay for his car. When I graduated valedictorian, you threw him a bigger party for making JV basketball. That's not—" "It is." I stood up, my hands shaking. "And now you want my house. The one thing I've built for myself. The one place that's actually mine." Dad finally looked up. "You're being selfish, Violet. We're family. Family helps family. Where was family when I was working 2 jobs to put myself through college? Where was family when I had pneumonia and called for help? But you were too busy driving Everett to his friend's lake house." "You've always been so independent," Mom said, like it was an accusation. "You never needed us like Everett does." "I never needed you because you taught me I couldn't count on you." The room went dead silent. Everett was staring at his phone. Dad had gone back to avoiding my eyes. Mom's mouth was opening and closing like a fish. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, grabbing my purse. "I'm going to leave. You're going to figure out your own mess. And I'm done being your emergency fund. If you walk out that door," Mom's voice turned ice cold, "don't expect to be welcome back." I paused at the threshold, my hand on the doorknob. For a split second, I felt that familiar tug of guilt, the ingrained need to smooth things over, to be the good daughter who fixes everything. Then I thought about my house, my beautiful, peaceful house with the garden I'd planted and the kitchen I'd tiled myself, the place where I could breathe. "Good," I said, and walked out. The next morning, I blocked all their numbers. Changed my locks, just in case. Told my boss I might need some time off if things got complicated. Then I sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee from my favorite mug, and waited for the guilt to hit. It never came. What came instead was something I hadn't felt in years: relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for 3 decades and could finally exhale. But as I sat there in the quiet of my own space, one question kept nagging at me. I'd drawn a line in the sand, burned a bridge I'd been tiptoeing across my whole life. I was free. So why did I have this creeping feeling that they weren't done with me yet? 3 weeks after I walked out, my best friend Sawyer showed up at my door with Thai takeout and a bottle of wine. "You look like hell," she said, pushing past me into the kitchen. "Thanks. Really what I needed to hear today. When's the last time you showered?" She started unpacking containers of pad thai and green curry. And don't lie to me. I couldn't remember. The days had been blending together in a haze of work, Netflix, and avoiding my phone. "Yesterday?" "Try again." "Fine, 3 days. Maybe 4. Sawyer grabbed 2 plates from my cabinet. "Okay, here's what's happening. We're eating, you're showering, and then we're talking about this guilt spiral you're in." "I'm not in a guilt spiral." She gave me a look that could have melted steel. "Violet, you haven't left this house except for work in 3 weeks. Caitlin tried to invite you to trivia night 5 times. You're screening calls from everyone, including me." I slumped into a chair. "I just need some time to process." "Process what? You did the right thing." "Did I, though?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "They're my parents, Sawyer. What if they really do lose the house? What if—" "Stop." She sat down across from me, her expression serious. "What did they do when you had that car accident 2 years ago and needed help with groceries? They were busy with Everett's graduation. What did they do when you got that promotion and wanted to celebrate? Mom said it was nice, but Everett had just gotten engaged. And what did they do when you called crying after your breakup with Marcus?" I stared at my plate. Dad said I was probably better off alone anyway. "Right, so tell me again why you owe them your house." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Don't answer it," Sawyer said. I looked at the screen. The text message made my stomach drop. "This is Caitlin. Your mom got my number somehow. She called me crying, saying you abandoned the family. She wants me to talk sense into you. What the hell is going on?" "Shit." I showed Sawyer the message. "They're making the rounds." She grabbed my phone and started typing. "I'm telling Caitlin to come over. You need to hear this from both of us." An hour later, Caitlin burst through my door like a hurricane in yoga pants. "Your mother is absolutely unhinged," she announced. "She called me sobbing about how ungrateful you are, how she raised you better than this, how family is supposed to stick together. I told her I'd talk to you, but honestly, I wanted to tell her where she could stick her family loyalty." "You didn't though, right?" "Of course not. I'm not stupid." Caitlin plopped down on my couch. "But Violet, she's painting you as the villain here. She's telling everyone you're selfish and cruel. My chest tightened. Maybe I am. Oh, for fuck's sake. Caitlin threw a pillow at me. You are not cruel. You know what's cruel? Bleeding your kid dry for 30 years and then demanding their house when your golden boy screws up. Sawyer nodded. She's right. And you know what else? You need to talk to someone about this. Like, professionally. I don't need therapy. Everyone needs therapy, Caitlin said. Especially people who've been emotional punching bags their whole lives. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Sawyer cleared her throat. There's something else. I did some digging after you told us what happened. She pulled out her phone. Your mom has a sister, right? Adeline? I blinked. How do you know about Aunt Adeline? You mentioned her once, years ago. Said there was some big family fight and they don't talk anymore. Yeah, it happened when I was a kid. I barely remember her. Well, she remembers you. Sawyer showed me her phone screen. I found her on LinkedIn. She's some big shot consultant now. Lives about 2 hours away. My heart started racing. You didn't contact her, did you? No, but maybe you should. Sawyer, I can't just... Why not? What's the worst that could happen? She doesn't respond? You're already dealing with family drama. At least this way you might get some answers about why they had that falling out. Caitlin leaned forward. What if she knows something about your parents that could help you understand all this? I stared at Adeline's professional headshot on the screen. She looked successful, confident. Nothing like the broken woman I vaguely remembered from childhood whispers. I don't know. Just think about it, Sawyer said gently. You don't have to decide tonight. But as they left, and I sat alone in my quiet house, I couldn't stop thinking about it. About Adeline. About the mysterious fight that split the family. About the nagging feeling that there were pieces of this story I'd never been told. I opened my laptop and found myself typing an email before I could talk myself out of it. Hi, Aunt Adeline. This is Violet, your sister Nancy's daughter. I know it's been a long time, but I was wondering if we could talk. There's been some family drama, and I have questions about the past that maybe you could help me understand. I hit send before I could chicken out. The response came back within an hour. Violet, I've been wondering when you'd reach out. Yes, we should definitely talk. There's more to your parents than you know. Adeline's house was nothing like what I expected. Where my parents lived in suburban chaos, mismatched furniture, clutter everywhere, bills stacked on every surface. Adeline's place was clean lines and calm energy. She answered the door in a crisp white blouse and dark jeans, looking like she'd stepped out of a business magazine. Violet. She studied my face for a long moment. You look just like your grandmother. I don't really remember her. Of course you don't. Nancy made sure of that. She stepped aside to let me in. Tea? We sat in her living room, expensive-looking cups balanced on our knees. The silence stretched until I couldn't stand it anymore. So, what happened? Between you and Mum, I mean. Adeline set down her cup. How much do you know about your parents' financial history? Not much. They've always been chaotic with money. Chaotic? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's one way to put it. Tell me, did they ever mention the inheritance from your grandmother? My stomach dropped. What inheritance? Exactly. Adeline leaned back in her chair. When our mother died 15 years ago, she left everything to both of us. 50-50 split. The house, her savings, her jewelry, about $200,000 total. I never heard anything about because Nancy forged my signature on the paperwork and took it all. The words hit me like a physical blow. She what? I was traveling for work when Mom died. Nancy handled all the funeral arrangements, said she'd take care of the estate. I trusted her. Adeline's voice was flat, controlled. By the time I found out what she'd done, they'd already spent most of it. On what? Everett's private school. That fancy car for your dad. The down payment on their current house. She paused. Your college fund that mysteriously disappeared? It never existed. They used grandmother's money for everything except what it was supposed to be for. I felt sick. Why didn't you fight it? Take them to court? I tried. But Nancy's always been clever about covering her tracks. She had forged documents, fake witnesses. It would have been a long, expensive battle with no guarantee of winning. Adeline's jaw tightened. So, I cut contact instead. Figured it was better to write off the money than deal with her manipulation for years. But you lost your family. I lost a sister who was willing to steal from me and lie about it. The family I thought I had was already gone. We sat in silence. I thought about all the times Mom had complained about money, all the guilt trips about how much they'd sacrificed for us kids. There's more, Adeline said quietly. More? The pattern didn't start with me, Violet. Your mother has been scapegoating strong women in this family for decades. Our older sister Rebecca? Nancy drove her away too, back when you were a baby. I have another aunt. Had. Rebecca died 3 years ago. Cancer. I only found out through an obituary online. Adeline's voice cracked slightly. Nancy made sure none of us stayed in touch. Divide and conquer, you know. Keep everyone isolated so no one compares notes. My hands were shaking. Why are you telling me this? Because you're next in line. You're strong, independent, successful. Everything Nancy can't control. So she'll destroy you if she can't use you. She already tried. The house thing was just the beginning. Adeline leaned forward. Violet, your mother doesn't just want your money. She wants to break you down until you're as dependent and miserable as the rest of them. It's what she does. I thought about Everett, still living at home at 28. About Dad, who hadn't made a decision without Mom's approval in decades. About myself, always running to fix their problems. How do I stop it? You already did. Walking away was the hardest part. Adeline smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. But you need to be prepared. She's not going to give up easily. What do you mean? Nancy doesn't handle rejection well. When I cut contact, she spent months trying to turn other family members against me. Told everyone I was jealous, selfish, mentally unstable. She'll do the same to you. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This is your cousin Mike. Your mom called crying. She says you won't help with the house, and now they might be homeless. What's wrong with you? I showed Adeline the message. She nodded grimly. It's starting. She's mobilizing the family guilt machine. What do I do? Nothing. Don't defend yourself. Don't explain. Don't engage. The people who matter will figure out the truth eventually. The ones who don't, well, you're better off without them anyway. Another text came through. Then another. My phone started buzzing constantly. Turn it off, Adeline said. Come on, I'll make us some real food. You look like you haven't eaten a proper meal in weeks. As she moved around the kitchen, I watched her efficient movements, her calm confidence. This was what it looked like to be free of them, to have boundaries that actually meant something. Adeline? Yes. Thank you for telling me the truth. She paused in her chopping. Violet, I should have reached out years ago. I should have warned you. I'm sorry I didn't. You're here now. That's what matters. But even as I said it, my phone kept buzzing in my pocket. The family guilt machine was just getting started. The legal papers arrived on a Thursday morning, delivered by a guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Violet Grant? He held out a manila envelope like it might bite him. Yeah, that's me. You've been served. I signed for it with shaking hands. already knowing this was going to be bad. But when I opened it and read the first page, my legs gave out. I had to sit down right there on my front porch. My parents had listed me as a co-signer on their mortgage refinance, the one they'd used to fund Everett's business. The bank was coming after me for the debt. My phone was already ringing before I could process what I was reading. Adeline? They're saying I co-signed their mortgage. They're saying I owe $60,000. Slow down. What exactly does the paperwork say? I read her the relevant sections, my voice getting higher with each line. But I never signed anything. I've never even seen these documents. Can you get to my house? Bring everything. We need to look at this together. An hour later, I was spread across Adeline's dining room table with legal documents, my laptop, and a growing sense of panic. Look at this signature, Adeline said, pointing to a scrawled version of my name. It's close, but the V is wrong. You loop yours differently. How can you tell? She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. Birthday card you sent me last week. See the difference? She was right. The signature on the mortgage papers was similar, but not identical. Someone had practiced, but not perfectly. They forged my signature, just like Nancy did with mine 15 years ago. Adeline's voice was grim. We need a lawyer. Now. I can't afford— I can. Consider it an investment in justice. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, took one look at the documents and shook her head. This is fraud. Clear as day. She pointed to several inconsistencies. The signature, the date discrepancies, the fact that you weren't present for notarization. We can fight this. How long will it take? Few weeks to get it dismissed, assuming they don't want to push it to trial. But, Patricia paused, you should know, filing a fraud claim means potential criminal charges against whoever forged your signature. My stomach lurched. Criminal charges? Forgery is a felony. If we prove they did this, they could face jail time. I looked at Adeline. She nodded slowly. Do it, I said. That afternoon, my phone exploded. Not just texts now. Actual calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Distant relatives, family friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Violet, it's your cousin Sarah. Your mum says you're trying to put them in jail over some paperwork mix-up. That can't be true, right? I hung up without answering. The next call was worse. This is Mrs. Henderson from down the street. Your poor mother is beside herself. She says you're being vindictive over a simple mistake. Surely you can work this out as a family. I turned my phone off, but the landline started ringing. Then someone knocked on my door. Don't answer it, Adeline said. She'd come over after I called her crying. Let them exhaust themselves. But the knocking continued. Then the doorbell. Then someone started calling my name from the sidewalk. Violet, open up! We need to talk! I peeked through the blinds. My neighbor from 3 houses down was standing on my lawn with his arms crossed. This is insane, I whispered. This is Nancy, Adeline corrected. She's turned you into the neighborhood villain. Classic move. My phone, even though it was off, somehow had 17 voicemails when I turned it back on. I played the first one. Violet, this is your father. His voice was shaking. I don't know what's gotten into you, but you need to call off these lawyers. Your mother is having chest pains from the stress. Do you want to put her in the hospital? The second voicemail was from Everett. Vi, come on. This is getting out of hand. Mom's talking about taking pills or something. She's really messed up. Just drop the lawsuit, okay? We'll figure something else out. The third was from a number I didn't recognize. This is Father Martinez from St. Catherine's. Your mother asked me to call. She's very concerned about your spiritual well-being. Perhaps we could meet and discuss forgiveness and family obligations. I looked at Adeline. They got their priest involved. Nancy always was thorough. The fourth voicemail made my blood run cold. Violet, it's Mom. Her voice was different now. Flat. Dangerous. I know you think you're so smart with your lawyers and your attitude, but you have no idea what you've started. Family is everything, and you've chosen to destroy yours. There will be consequences for this. Mark my words. I played it again, my hands shaking. Is that a threat? I asked Adeline. It sounds like one to me. She was already reaching for her phone. I'm calling Patricia. We need to document this. As she dialed, my phone buzzed with a text from Everett. Something bad happened. Mom and Dad lost the house. They're packing right now. This is all your fault. I hope you're happy. I stared at the message, waiting for the guilt to hit, for the urge to call them, to fix everything, to be the good daughter who saves the day. But all I felt was a cold, hard certainty that this was just the beginning. 2 months after the legal papers, Adeline moved in with me. It's temporary, she said, carrying a suitcase up my front steps. Just until I figure out what to do about the cancer. I nearly dropped the box I was holding. What cancer? Breast cancer. Early stage, very treatable. But the treatment's going to knock me on my ass for a while. She set down her suitcase and looked at me. I was going to handle it alone, but then I thought, why? I have family now. Real family. Of course you're staying here, for as long as you need. Having Adeline in the house changed everything. She made coffee at 5 a.m. and read the news on her tablet. She organized my spice rack and fixed my leaky bathroom faucet. She listened when I came home from therapy sessions, raw and exhausted from digging through 30 years of family dysfunction. Tell me about the guilt, Dr. Martinez said during one session. Not the priest. My therapist happened to have the same last name, which felt like cosmic irony. It's getting better, but sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. wondering if they're okay, if they have food, if they're safe. And what do you do with those thoughts? I remind myself that their safety isn't my responsibility, that I didn't create this situation. Good. What else? I remember what Adeline told me about the pattern, how Mom has been doing this to strong women in our family for decades, how if I give in now, it'll never stop. When I got home from that session, Adeline was in the kitchen making soup. How'd it go? Better. I'm starting to understand that saying no isn't cruel. It's necessary. Damn right it is. She ladled soup into bowls. You know what your problem was? You thought love meant sacrifice, but real love doesn't ask you to destroy yourself. That night, we sat on my back porch watching the sunset. Adeline was wearing a soft knit cap. The chemo had started, and her hair was thinning. Can I ask you something? I said. Shoot. Do you ever regret cutting them off, even knowing what you know now? Adeline was quiet for a long moment. I regret not doing it sooner. I regret all the years I spent trying to fix things that were never my responsibility to fix. She looked at me. But cutting them off? Never. It saved my life. Even though you lost your whole family? Violet, I didn't lose my family. I found it. She gestured between us. This is family. 2 people who choose to support each other, who don't keep score, who don't demand sacrifices. This is what family should be. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my front door. No signature, just block letters on plain paper. We need you. We're coming. I showed it to Adeline over breakfast. Well, she said, buttering her toast calmly. That's ominous. Should I call the police? And tell them what? Your estranged family sent you a vague note? They'll file it under family drama and forget about it. So what do I do? You prepare. Mentally, emotionally, practically. She finished her toast and looked at me seriously. Violet, they're going to show up here eventually. Probably when they're desperate enough to try one last manipulation. When they do, you need to be ready. Ready how? Ready to say no and mean it. Ready to not let them in your house or your head. Ready to close the door and walk away. That afternoon, Sawyer and Caitlin came over for what had become our weekly check-in. They'd been incredible through all of this, showing up with groceries when I was too anxious to shop, sitting with me during chemo appointments with Adeline, running interference when random relatives tried to ambush me at work. "Any word from the family circus?" Caitlin asked, settling onto my couch with a glass of wine. "Just this." I showed them the note. "Creepy," Sawyer said, "but also kind of pathetic. Like, what are they, 12? "The pathetic part is what makes them dangerous," Adeline said from the kitchen. "Desperate people do desperate things." "What's the worst they could do?" Caitlin asked. "Show up crying? Try to guilt trip you? You've handled that already." "They could show up with suitcases," I said quietly. "Homeless, with nowhere else to go. Banking on the fact that I won't let family sleep on the street." The room went quiet. "Would you?" Sawyer asked. "Let them in, I mean." I thought about it. Really thought about it. 6 months ago, the answer would have been yes, absolutely. I would have opened my door and my wallet and probably my spare bedroom. "No," I said, and the word felt solid, final. "I wouldn't." "Good," Adeline said from the doorway, "because that's exactly what they're planning." "How do you know?" "Because it's what Nancy did to Rebecca 20 years ago. Showed up homeless with Everett as a baby, crying about having nowhere to go. Rebecca took them in, and Nancy spent the next 6 months systematically destroying her marriage and her finances. By the time Rebecca kicked them out, her husband had left and she'd lost her house." "Jesus," Caitlin whispered. "Nancy's playbook never changes. She just finds new victims." Adeline sat down next to me. "But you're not Rebecca. You know what's coming. You're prepared." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Somewhere out there, my parents and brother were planning their next move. They thought they knew me, the dutiful daughter who always caved, who always fixed things, who always put family first. They were about to find out how wrong they were. The doorbell rang at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night in October. I was in my pajamas, curled up on the couch with Adeline watching some cooking show. She'd finished her last round of chemo the week before and was finally starting to look like herself again. Colour in her cheeks, spark back in her eyes. The bell rang again, then again. Then someone started pounding on the door. "Violet! We know you're in there! Open up!" My blood turned to ice. Mum's voice, but different, desperate, raw. Adeline muted the TV and looked at me. "You ready for this?" I nodded, but my hands were shaking as I walked to the front door. Through the peephole, I could see them huddled on my porch. Mom, Dad, and Everett, all carrying suitcases and looking like they'd been sleeping rough. "Violet, please!" Mum's voice cracked. "We just need somewhere to stay tonight. We've been in the car for 3 days." "Don't open it," Adeline said quietly behind me, but I found myself reaching for the deadbolt anyway. Some deeply ingrained part of me couldn't stand the thought of family sleeping in a car. "Violet!" Adeline's hand covered mine on the lock. "Remember what we talked about. Remember Rebecca." I pulled my hand back and pressed my forehead against the door. "Violet," Dad's voice now. "Come on, honey. We're family. You can't just leave us out here." "I can talk to them through the door," I said to Adeline. "You can, but you don't have to." I took a deep breath. "Mom? I can hear you. What do you want?" "We want to come inside and talk to you like civilized people," Mom said. "We've been driving around for days looking for you. We lost everything, Violet. Everything. The house. The car. Well, the bank's repossessing it tomorrow. We have nowhere else to go." "What about Everett's friends, his business partners?" "They won't return our calls." Everett's voice, sullen and angry. Everyone's acting like we have the plague or something. Where have you been staying? Motels when we could afford them. The car when we couldn't. Mom's voice was getting that familiar manipulative quaver. Your father's back is killing him from sleeping in the front seat. I haven't had a real shower in 4 days. I closed my eyes. This was the moment. The test of everything I'd learned. Everything I'd built over the past 6 months. I'm sorry you're going through this, I said through the door. But I can't help you. Silence. Then Dad's voice, sharper now. Can't or won't? Won't. Jesus Christ, Violet, Everett exploded. What is wrong with you? We're your family. You forged my signature on legal documents, I said, my voice getting stronger. You tried to make me responsible for your debt. You turned half the family against me with lies. That was a misunderstanding, Mum started. It was fraud. Felony fraud. We dropped the charges, Dad said. We told them it was a mistake, after my lawyer proved you were lying. More silence. Then Mom's voice, different now, colder. Fine. If that's how you want to play this, fine, but don't think this is over. You can't hide behind that door forever. I'm not hiding, I'm setting boundaries. Boundaries? Mom laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what your therapist taught you? To abandon your family when they need you most? My therapist taught me that love doesn't require self-destruction. Oh, spare me the psychology bullshit. You know what I think? I think you're enjoying this. I think you like seeing us suffer. Something shifted inside me. The last piece of guilt, the final thread of obligation just snapped. You know what, Mom? Maybe I am enjoying it a little. Maybe after 30 years of being your emotional punching bag and emergency ATM, it feels good to watch you face consequences for once. Violet! Dad sounded shocked. What? You want honesty? Here's honesty. You destroyed your own lives with your greed and your favoritism and your complete inability to take responsibility for anything. And now you want me to fix it, just like always. Well, I'm done fixing your messes. We raised you, Mom screamed. We gave you everything. You gave me trauma and debt and a lifetime of feeling like I was never good enough. I was shouting now, months of suppressed anger pouring out. Behind me, I felt Adeline's hand on my shoulder, steadying me. You want to know what you gave me? I continued. You gave me the knowledge that family will use you up and throw you away the second you stop being useful. You gave me trust issues and anxiety and the inability to believe I deserve love without paying for it. Violet, please. Mom's voice was smaller now. We're sorry. We'll do better. Just let us in. No. What? I said no. You're not coming in. You're not staying here. You're not my problem anymore. I heard whispering on the other side of the door. Then Everett's voice, louder. Fine, but when you're old and alone and need help, don't come crying to us. I won't, I said. I promise you, I won't. More whispering. Then footsteps moving away from the door. I stayed pressed against it, listening, until I heard car doors slam and an engine start. Only then did I turn around. Adeline was standing behind me, arms crossed, smiling. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about it. Free. Good. Because look who was watching from the kitchen window. She stepped aside, and I saw them both, Sawyer and Caitlin, grinning at me from the doorway. We came over to check on you, Sawyer said. Heard the shouting from the driveway. That, Caitlin said, was fucking beautiful. But even as we hugged and laughed and celebrated, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The look on Mum's face through the peephole, the tone in her voice at the end. This felt like a retreat, not a surrender. They'd be back. They came back 3 days later, this time at 6 a.m., when they knew I'd be getting ready for work. The pounding on the door was violent, desperate. I was in the kitchen making coffee when it started, and I nearly dropped the pot. "Violet, open this door right now!" Mom's voice, but worse than before, ragged, unhinged. Adeline appeared in the doorway, pulling on her robe. "Same plan as before?" I nodded, but my heart was hammering. Something felt different this time, more dangerous. "We know you're in there." Dad's voice joined Mom's. "Your car's in the driveway. We're not leaving until you talk to us," Everett added. I walked to the front door, but didn't look through the peephole. I didn't want to see their faces. "You need to leave," I called out. "I told you Tuesday night." "Tuesday night you were being dramatic," Mom cut me off. "We've had time to think about this rationally. We have a proposition." "I'm not interested in any propositions." "Just hear us out," Dad said. 5 minutes. That's all we're asking." "No." The pounding started again, harder this time. My front door was solid wood, but it was shaking in the frame. "Open this door, Violet," Mom screamed. "We are your parents. You owe us basic respect." "I don't owe you anything." "The hell you don't. We fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head for 18 years. And I've been paying you back ever since." "Not nearly enough." Mom's voice was getting higher, more frantic. "You think a few thousand here and there makes up for everything we sacrificed. You think—" She stopped mid-sentence. I heard muffled voices, like they were arguing among themselves. Then Everett's voice, clearer than the others. "Just tell her." "Tell me what?" Silence. Then Dad cleared his throat. "Violet, we need to be honest with you about something." "Oh, this should be good," Adeline muttered behind me. "The house situation. It's worse than we said. We don't just owe the bank. We owe other people. Dangerous people." My blood went cold. "What kind of people?" "Everett's business partners weren't all legitimate," Mom said, her voice smaller now. "Some of the investors, they want their money back, with interest." "How much interest?" "A lot," Everett said. "Like, break your legs kind of interest." I looked at Adeline. Her face had gone pale. "So you came here," I said slowly, "to my house, leading dangerous people to my door." "We didn't lead them anywhere," Dad protested. "We've been careful. You've been driving around for days. You think they can't follow you?" "Violet, please." Mom's voice was breaking now. "We just need enough money to disappear. Start over somewhere else. You have equity in this house. You could take out a loan." "Absolutely not." "They're going to kill us," Everett shouted. "Do you understand that? They're going to actually kill us." "Then you should have thought of that before you got involved with loan sharks." "We didn't know," Mom sobbed. "We thought it was just business investors." "Bullshit," Adeline said, loud enough for them to hear. "Nobody invests in cryptocurrency startups without doing due diligence." Silence from the other side of the door. "Who is that?" Mom's voice was sharp now. "Who's in there with you?" I looked at Adeline. She nodded. "Someone who knows exactly what kind of people you are," I said. "Violet, who is in your house?" Adeline stepped up beside me and spoke directly to the door. "Hello, Nancy." The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear my parents' hearts stopping. "Adeline." Mum's voice was barely a whisper. "Surprised? You shouldn't be. Strong women in this family have a way of finding each other." "You turned her against us," Dad said, his voice shaking with rage. "You poisoned her mind with your lies." I told her the truth. About the inheritance you stole. About Rebecca. About your pattern of destroying anyone who threatens your control. "That's not— We never— You forged my signature 15 years ago and stole $200,000, Adeline said, her voice cutting through Dad's stammering. "You drove Rebecca out of the family and destroyed her life. And now you're trying to do the same thing to Violet." "She's our daughter!" Mom screamed. "She belongs with us!" She belongs with people who love her without conditions, Adeline shot back. People who don't see her as an ATM with legs. You don't know anything about our family. I know you're standing on her doorstep at 6 a.m. demanding money to pay off loan sharks. I know you forged her signature on mortgage documents. I know you've spent 30 years making her feel guilty for existing. I heard Mum start crying. Not the manipulative tears she usually deployed, but ugly, desperate sobs. "Violet," she said through the door. "Please, I'm begging you. We're your family." "No," I said, and my voice was steady now. Strong. "Family doesn't forge signatures. Family doesn't steal inheritances. Family doesn't show up with dangerous people looking for them and ask you to risk your life to save theirs." "So that's it?" Everett's voice was bitter. "You're just going to let us die?" "I'm going to let you face the consequences of your choices. We'll tell everyone what you did," Mom said, her voice turning vicious. "We'll tell them you let your own family get murdered because you were too selfish to help." "Go ahead," I said. "Tell them. Tell them everything. Tell them about the forgery and the theft and the loan sharks. I'm sure they'll be very sympathetic." I heard footsteps moving away from the door, then coming back. "This isn't over," Mom said. "You think you can hide behind that door forever, but you can't. We'll find another way." "No," Adeline said firmly. "You won't. Because I'm here now, and I know all your tricks. I know how you operate, and I won't let you destroy another strong woman in this family. Adeline, get off this property, now, before I call the police and tell them about the loan sharks and the threats and the harassment." More footsteps, car doors slamming, engine starting. I waited until the sound faded completely before I turned around. Adeline was looking at me with something like pride. "How do you feel?" I thought about it. Like I just won a war. You did, we both did. But as we stood there in my hallway, I couldn't shake the feeling that wars have casualties. And sometimes, even when you win, the cost is higher than you ever imagined. The news came through Sawyer 3 weeks after the doorstep confrontation. "So, I have an update on your family situation," she said, settling into my kitchen chair with her usual directness. "My cousin works at the county courthouse. Thought you'd want to know." I looked up from the soup I was stirring. Adeline was napping upstairs. Her energy was still returning slowly, but she was getting stronger every day. "Good news or bad news? Depends on your perspective." Sawyer pulled out her phone. "Your parents filed for bankruptcy. Complete liquidation. And Everett, well, let's just say those business partners you mentioned weren't very patient." My stomach dropped. "Is he?" "Alive, but relocated. Witness protection kind of thing. Apparently he rolled over on some bigger fish to save his own skin." I sat down hard. Jesus. "There's more. Your mom's been telling anyone who'll listen that you're responsible for all of this, that you could have prevented it if you'd just helped them." "Of course she is. But here's the thing, nobody's buying it. Mrs. Henderson from your old neighborhood? She called my mom to ask what really happened. Turns out your parents have been hitting up everyone they know for money, telling different stories to different people. People are starting to compare notes." Sawyer showed me her phone screen. It was a Facebook post from someone I vaguely recognized, a family friend from years ago. "Just found out the Grants have been telling people their daughter abandoned them, but also that she's mentally ill, but also that she stole money from them, but also that she's controlled by an evil relative. Which is it? Starting to think Nancy and Wallace aren't as innocent as they claim." The comments were brutal, person after person sharing their own experiences with my parents' manipulation, their requests for money, their contradictory stories. "It's like watching a house of cards collapse," Sawyer said. "All those years of lies are finally catching up with them." I scrolled through more comments. Neighbors talking about the screaming matches they'd overheard. Old co-workers mentioning the times my parents had asked for loans. Even some of Everett's friends chiming in about his entitled behavior and get-rich-quick schemes. "How do you feel about all this?" Sawyer asked. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "This is your cousin Mike. I owe you an apology. Mom told me what really happened with Grandma's inheritance. I'm sorry I believed Nancy's lies about you. You did the right thing." Then another text, from a different number. "Hi Violet, this is Sarah. I wanted to reach out after talking to Uncle Mike. I had no idea about the forged signatures and everything else. I'm sorry for the nasty message I sent you months ago. You didn't deserve that." My phone kept buzzing. More apologies. More people who'd finally heard the real story and realized they'd been played. "The truth has a way of coming out," Adeline said from the doorway. She'd woken up from her nap and was looking more alert than she had in weeks. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough to see justice in action." She sat down next to me and looked at my phone. "You know what this means, don't you? That my family's reputation is destroyed? That you're free, completely free. No more guilt, no more wondering if you did the right thing, no more looking over your shoulder waiting for the next manipulation." She was right. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly untethered from their chaos. The fear that had been living in my chest for months, the fear that they'd find a way to drag me back in, was finally gone. "There's something else," Sawyer said. "My courthouse cousin mentioned that your parents are looking at some serious legal trouble. The loan shark thing led to a bigger investigation. Turns out Everett's business was involved in some money laundering. So they might actually face consequences? Real consequences. The kind that don't go away when you cry and make promises to do better." That evening, I sat on my back porch with Adeline, watching the sunset. The air was crisp with the promise of winter, but I felt warmer than I had in years. "Any regrets?" Adeline asked. I thought about it honestly. I regret that it took me so long to see what they were. I regret all the years I spent trying to earn love that was never going to be freely given. But not the choice to walk away. Never. Not for a second. My phone buzzed one more time. Another unknown number, but this message was different. "Violet, this is Rebecca's daughter Emma. I found your number through Adeline. I wanted you to know that Mum talked about you before she died. She said she hoped you'd be stronger than she was, that you'd find a way to break the cycle. I think she'd be proud of you." I showed the message to Adeline. Her eyes filled with tears. "She would be proud," Adeline said softly. "We both broke the cycle. We both chose ourselves over their dysfunction. Do you think they'll ever change? Does it matter? They're not your responsibility anymore." She was right. Whatever happened to my parents and Everett from here on out was their story to write. I had my own story now, one where I got to choose who deserved my love, my time, my energy. One where I finally understood that the most radical act of self-love is sometimes simply saying no and walking away.
"She's finally going to do something useful." The words hit me like a slap across the face. I froze in the hallway, my hand gripping the doorframe to the dining room where my family sat around the table, picking at Mum's overcooked pot roast. My sister Sadie was on her phone as usual, probably talking to one of her followers about our inspiring family journey. My name is Lillian, and I've been invisible in this house for 28 years. But apparently, now that my father needs a kidney and I'm the only match, I'm suddenly worth noticing. "Lil, get in here," Mum called out, her voice sharp with that familiar edge of impatience. "We need to discuss the surgery schedule." I walked into the room and sat down at my usual spot, the chair with the wobbly leg that no one ever bothered to fix. Dad didn't look up from his plate. He never did. Even now, with his skin the colour of old newspaper and his hands shaking from the dialysis, he couldn't be bothered to acknowledge me. "So, the doctor says we can schedule for next month," Mum continued, cutting her meat with aggressive precision. That gives us time to get everything in order. Get what in order? I asked. But Sadie finally looked up from her phone. Oh my God, Lil, don't be dramatic. It's just surgery. People donate kidneys all the time. Easy surgery for you to say. You're not the one going under the knife. But you're the perfect match, Mum said, like that settled everything. Dr. Morrison said, your tissue compatibility is excellent. It's meant to be. Meant to be. Right. Like my autoimmune disease was meant to be too. Like the fact that major surgery could trigger a flare-up that might leave me bedridden for months was just a minor inconvenience. What about the risks? I asked. Dr. Morrison mentioned that with my condition. Oh, that's just doctor talk. Mom waved her hand dismissively. They have to tell you all the scary stuff for legal reasons. You'll be fine. Sadie held up her phone. Actually, this is perfect timing. I'm doing a series on family sacrifice and medical journeys. My engagement has been through the roof since I started posting about Dad's kidney disease. You're not posting about my surgery, I said firmly. Why not? It's inspiring. A daughter saving her father's life. My followers are eating this stuff up. Because it's my body, Sadie. My medical information. She rolled her eyes. God, you're so selfish. This could really help my brand. Do you know how many people would kill for this kind of authentic content? Authentic content. That's what my potential suffering was to her. Content. Dad finally spoke up. When do we schedule it? Not, how are you feeling about this, Lillian? Or, are you scared? Just when, like I was a spare part he'd ordered online. I haven't agreed to anything yet, I said. The room went dead silent. Mum's fork clattered against her plate. What do you mean you haven't agreed? Mum's voice was dangerously quiet. I mean, I need time to think about it, to understand all the risks, to talk to my own doctors. Your own doctors? Sadie laughed. Lil, you're being ridiculous. Dad could die without this transplant. And I could have serious complications. My rheumatologist said, Your rheumatologist doesn't know everything, Mum snapped. Dr. Morrison is one of the best transplant surgeons in the state. If he says, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. I looked around the table at their faces. Mum's mouth was set in that thin line that meant she was about to lose her temper. Sadie was already typing on her phone, probably crafting some post about ungrateful family members. And Dad was staring at his plate like this conversation was happening to someone else. I just need some time, I said quietly. Time? Mum's voice rose. Your father doesn't have time, Lillian. Every day we wait, he gets sicker. How can you be so selfish? Selfish. The word I'd heard my entire life. Selfish for wanting to go to college out of state. Selfish for not visiting enough. Selfish for having a chronic illness that required attention and medical bills. Selfish for existing, basically. I stood up from the table. I'm going to bed. We're not done talking about this, Mum called after me. But I was already walking away, my heart pounding in my chest. As I climbed the stairs, I heard Sadie's voice drift up from the dining room. Don't worry, Mum. She'll come around. She always does. They could survive without me, if they tried for once. The appointment with Dr. Morrison was scheduled for Tuesday morning. Mum insisted on driving, which meant 40 minutes of her lecturing me about family duty, while NPR droned in the background. Your father raised you, she said for the third time as we pulled into the hospital parking garage. Fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head. This is how you pay him back. By risking my life? Don't be so dramatic, Lillian. It's outpatient surgery. I wanted to scream. Outpatient didn't mean risk-free, especially not for someone with an autoimmune disease. But explaining that to Mum was like trying to teach calculus to a brick wall. The waiting room was packed. Mum immediately started chatting with another woman about her brave daughter who was donating a kidney. I sank deeper into my chair and tried to disappear. Lillian Kelly? A nurse called my name. Dr. Morrison's office was all diplomas and family photos. He was younger than I'd expected, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The kind of doctor who actually listened when you talked. "So, Lillian, how are you feeling about the procedure?" he asked, settling behind his desk. Before I could answer, Mom jumped in. "She's ready. We just need to schedule it." Dr. Morrison's eyes stayed on me. "Lillian, I have some concerns," I said, "about my autoimmune condition. My rheumatologist mentioned that major surgery could trigger a flare." "That's a valid concern," he said, making a note. "Have you discussed this with Dr. Patterson?" "Who's Dr. Patterson?" Mum asked. "My rheumatologist. And yes, I have. She's worried about—" "Dr. Morrison," Mom interrupted, "surely you've dealt with patients who have minor health issues before? Lillian's condition is very manageable. Minor health issues? I'd been hospitalized twice last year during flares, but sure, minor." Dr. Morrison looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Kelly, I need to hear from Lillian directly about her medical history and concerns." "Of course," Mum said, but she didn't stop talking. "It's just that time is so critical here. James is getting weaker every day. We can't afford to overthink this. Actually," Dr. Morrison said carefully, "there are other options we should discuss. Paired kidney exchange programs, for instance." "What's that?" I asked. "It's when incompatible donor-recipient pairs swap kidneys. So, if you can't donate to your father for medical reasons, you might donate to someone else, and their intended donor would give to your father." Mom's face went white. "But Lillian is compatible. You said so yourself. Compatibility isn't just about blood type and tissue matching," Dr. Morrison explained. "We have to consider the donor's overall health and surgical risks." "What kind of risks?" I asked. Dr. Morrison pulled out a pamphlet. "For someone with your autoimmune condition, there's an increased risk of infection, delayed healing, and potential for triggering a severe flare that could affect your remaining kidney function." The room went silent. Mum was staring at the pamphlet like it had personally offended her. "How increased?" I pressed. "Significantly higher than the general population. I'd want you to get clearance from both your rheumatologist and an immunologist before we proceed." "This is ridiculous," Mum said. "You're scaring her unnecessarily." "Mrs. Kelly, informed consent means understanding all the risks." "But she's the only match in the family. Sadie wasn't compatible and I'm too old." "Which is why I mentioned the paired exchange program," Dr. Morrison said patiently. "It might be a safer option for everyone involved." Mom stood up abruptly. "We need to discuss this as a family." "Come on, Lillian." In the car, Mom was silent until we hit the highway. Then she exploded. "I can't believe that doctor is trying to talk you out of this. Your father is dying, Lillian. Dying. And you're worried about some theoretical risks?" "They're not theoretical if they happen to me." "You're being selfish. Again." My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend Kimberly. "How did the appointment go?" Another buzz. This one from Brian, the family lawyer who'd been Dad's friend since college. "Your mum called me, said you're having second thoughts. Want to talk?" "Who are you texting?" Mom demanded. "Kimberly." Don't go filling her head with nonsense about this. She doesn't understand family obligations. When we got home, Sadie was in the kitchen, filming herself making a smoothie. She had her ring light set up and everything. "Hey guys! So today, my sister had her pre-surgery consultation, and I'm feeling so emotional about this journey we're all on together." "Turn that off," I said. "What? I'm just sharing our story." "It's not your story to share." She lowered her phone. "God, what's your problem? You've been weird about this whole thing." "My problem is that you're treating Dad's kidney disease like content for your Instagram." "I'm raising awareness about organ donation. Do you know how many lives I could save by sharing our experience? What about my life? What if something goes wrong during surgery? Sadie rolled her eyes. Nothing's going to go wrong. You're being paranoid. That night, I sat in my room researching paired kidney exchanges. The more I read, the more it made sense. There were people all over the country in similar situations, willing donors who couldn't give to their intended recipients for medical reasons. My phone rang. Brian. Hey, kiddo, your mum said you're having doubts. I'm having concerns about the medical risks. That's smart. You should be asking questions. Really? Of course. This is major surgery, Lil. You have every right to understand what you're getting into. For the first time in weeks, someone was treating me like a person instead of a walking organ. Brian, can I ask you something? Legally, I mean. Shoot. Do I have to donate? Like, legally? There was a pause. No, sweetheart. You absolutely do not have to donate. No one can force you to undergo surgery. I closed my eyes and felt something loosen in my chest. Okay, thank you. Lil, whatever you decide, make sure it's what you want, not what anyone else wants. After I hung up, I stared at my laptop screen. The Paired Exchange Program website was still open. There was a contact form at the bottom of the page. I started typing. The Paired Exchange coordinator called me back within 2 days. Her name was Janet, and she had the kind of calm, professional voice that made you feel like everything might actually work out. So, you're interested in our program? She asked. I was hiding in my car during lunch break, parked behind the law office where I worked. Yes, but I need to understand how it works exactly. Well, it's fairly straightforward. We match incompatible pairs. You donate to someone else's recipient, and their donor would give to your father. And my family wouldn't know it was me who arranged it? Janet paused. That's unusual. Typically, families coordinate these things together. My situation is complicated. I see. Well, yes, we can arrange it so the donation appears to come through our standard matching process. But, Lillian, I have to ask, are you being pressured to donate? The question hung in the air. Was I being pressured, or was this just normal family expectations? It's complicated, I repeated. Okay, why don't you come in next week? We can discuss your options in person. That evening, Sadie cornered me in the kitchen while I was making dinner. So, I've been thinking about the surgery content, she said, leaning against the counter. I want to document everything, the prep, the actual day, your recovery. My followers are so invested in this story. I said no filming. Come on, Lil, this could be huge for both of us. I could get you a cut of the sponsorship money. I don't want sponsorship money from my surgery. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling. Look at these comments on my last post. Your sister is so brave. What an inspiration. Family goals. People are really connecting with this. I read over her shoulder. The post was a photo of Dad looking frail in his hospital bed with the caption, "My dad's kidney journey continues, praying my sister finds the courage to step up." Family. First, Jacques organ donation. Jacques Desire, prayers needed. You posted a picture of Dad in the hospital without asking him? He was asleep, and it's raising awareness. Delete it. What? No, it has over 3,000 likes. Sadie, delete the post. You're being ridiculous. It's not even about you. But it was about me. The comments were full of people praising my upcoming sacrifice and calling me a hero. Some were even asking when the surgery was scheduled so they could follow the journey. If you don't delete it, I'll report it to Instagram for posting medical information without consent. Her eyes narrowed. You wouldn't? Try me. She stared at me for a long moment, then started typing angrily on her phone. Fine, but you're being a total bitch about this. The next morning, Mum ambushed me at breakfast. "I scheduled your pre-op appointment for Friday," she announced, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "Dr. Morrison wants to do some additional blood work. I haven't agreed to the surgery yet." "Lillian, stop this nonsense. Your father's condition is deteriorating. Then maybe we should look into that paired exchange program Dr. Morrison mentioned." Mum's coffee mug hit the table with a sharp clink. "Why would we do that when you're a perfect match?" "Because it might be safer for me." "Safer?" She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You know what's not safe? Letting your father die because you're too scared to help him. That's not fair." "Fair?" Mum's voice rose. "You want to talk about fair? Fair is that I've spent 30 years taking care of this family. Fair is that your father worked 2 jobs to pay for your college. Fair is that when someone in this family needs help, we help them. Even if it kills me? Don't be so dramatic, you're not going to die." But I could see it in her eyes. Even if I did, she'd find a way to make it my fault. That afternoon, I met Janet at the hospital. She was a small woman with grey hair and kind eyes, the kind of person who'd probably heard every family horror story in the book. "Tell me about your situation," she said, settling into her chair. "My father needs a kidney. I'm the only family match, but I have an autoimmune disease that makes surgery risky." "And your family's response to those risks?" I stared at my hands. "They think I'm being selfish." Janet nodded slowly. "How do you feel about donating?" "Terrified. Not just of the surgery, but of what happens if something goes wrong. If I have complications, if I can't work, if I need care myself, they'll resent me for it." "That's a lot to carry." "I love my father," I said quickly. "I want him to live, but I also want to live." "Of course you do. That's not selfish, Lillian, that's human." We spent an hour going over the paired exchange process. Janet explained that they had several potential matches for Dad, and that my kidney could help someone else's father, mother, child. "There's one more thing," I said as we wrapped up. "If I do this, I don't want my family to know I arranged it. I want them to think it just happened through the regular system." "That's possible, but, Lillian, have you considered that this might not solve the underlying problem with your family?" "What do you mean?" "Well, they'll still expect you to be available for the next crisis, the next time someone needs something." I thought about that as I drove home. She was right, of course. But maybe that was a problem for future me to solve. That night, I sat at my laptop and started typing. Not an email to Janet, but something else. Something I'd been thinking about for days. A letter to my family, explaining everything I'd never been able to say out loud. I wrote for 2 hours, deleting and rewriting, trying to find the words for 28 years of feeling invisible. When I finished, I printed it out and sealed it in an envelope. Then I called Janet. "I want to do the paired exchange," I said. "And I want to give you this letter to read to my family when the time comes." "Are you sure about this, Lillian?" I looked around my childhood bedroom, at the participation trophies and honour roll certificates that no one had ever celebrated, at the medical bills stacked on my desk that I'd been paying myself since I turned 18. "I'm sure." The morning of the scheduled surgery, I woke up at 5 a.m. to the sound of Mum banging around in the kitchen. She was making Dad's last meal before surgery. Scrambled eggs and toast, like he was going to the electric chair instead of getting a life-saving transplant. I packed my suitcase quietly, folding clothes I'd bought specifically for this moment. A week's worth of outfits for a new life. My hand shook as I zipped it closed and slid it under my bed. "Lil, breakfast?" Mum called. Downstairs, the whole family was gathered around the kitchen table. Dad sat there looking pale and resigned, picking at his eggs. Sadie had her phone propped up against the orange juice pitcher, filming herself eating oatmeal. "Good morning, beautiful souls," she said to her camera. "Today is the big day. In a few hours, my incredible sister will be giving our father the gift of life. I sat down and poured myself coffee. My phone buzzed. A text from Kimberly. You ready? I typed back. As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, I'm picking you up at 7:30. Your Uber to the airport is at 8:15. Lil, you're not eating? Mum observed, eyeing my untouched toast. I'm not supposed to eat before surgery. Right, of course. She turned back to fussing over Dad. James, you need to eat something. You'll need your strength. I'm not hungry, Dad mumbled. Well, you have to try. Dr. Morrison said, Sarah, please. Dad's voice was sharper than usual. I know what the doctor said. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Sadie kept filming, probably loving the raw family tension for her content. So, after the surgery, Mum continued, I thought we could all have dinner together. Celebrate. I'll probably be pretty out of it, I said. Oh, you'll be fine. It's laparoscopic surgery. You'll be up and walking around in no time. Right, because she was a medical expert now. My phone buzzed again. Kimberly. I'm outside. I stood up. I need to get something from my car. What? Mum asked. Is it just something I forgot? I walked outside where Kimberly was waiting in her Honda, engine running. She rolled down the window. You sure about this? She asked. I'm sure. Your family's going to lose their minds. Good. Maybe they'll finally understand what it feels like to be abandoned. I went back inside and grabbed my purse from the counter. Mum was loading the dishwasher, Dad had disappeared, and Sadie was still filming herself. Okay, we should head to the hospital soon, Mum said. Traffic might be bad. Actually, I need to run an errand first. An errand? Lillian, we don't have time for errands. It'll just take a few minutes. What kind of errand? I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman who'd spent my entire life treating me like an inconvenience, except when she needed something from me. I need to pick up my prescription, I lied. Which prescription? The one Dr. Morrison prescribed for after surgery. She frowned. I thought they were giving you that at the hospital. This is a different one, for my autoimmune condition. Fine, but make it quick. We need to be there by 9. I walked upstairs to get my suitcase, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. When I came back down, I set it by the front door. Why do you have a suitcase? Sadie asked, finally looking up from her phone. Recovery supplies, clothes, books, stuff like that. You're not staying at the hospital overnight. I know, but I might need to stay somewhere quiet for a few days while I recover. Mum appeared in the doorway. Stay where? Maybe Kimberly's place. You know how loud it gets here. Loud? Mum's voice went up an octave. This house is not loud. With Sadie filming all the time and everyone coming and going. I'm not filming all the time, Sadie protested. You literally filmed breakfast this morning. That was different. That was documenting a historic family moment. I picked up my suitcase and purse. I'll be back in a few minutes. Lillian, Mum's voice stopped me at the door. You're acting strange. I'm about to have major surgery. I think I'm allowed to act a little strange. But you're coming back, right? We're all going to the hospital together. I looked at her face, at the worry lines around her eyes. For a split second, I almost felt guilty. Almost. Of course I'm coming back. The lie tasted bitter in my mouth. I walked out to Kimberly's car and threw my suitcase in the back seat. Through the kitchen window, I could see Mom washing dishes and Sadie still filming herself. Dad was nowhere to be seen. Drive, I said. Kimberly pulled away from the curb. No second thoughts? None. What about your dad? What about him? He'll get his kidney, just not from me. We drove in silence for a few minutes. Then Kimberly asked, What do you think they'll do when they realise you're gone? Panic. Blame me. Probably call the police. And then they'll find out about the paired exchange, and they'll read my letter. What did you say in the letter? I stared out the window at the suburban streets I'd grown up on. Everything I should have said years ago. At the airport, Kimberly hugged me tight. Text me when you land. I will. And Lil, you're doing the right thing. I hope so. I walked into the terminal and didn't look back. My phone was buzzing constantly now, probably Mum wondering where I was. I turned it off and dropped it in a trash can near the security checkpoint. Let them wonder. As my plane taxied down the runway, I imagined the scene at the hospital. Dr. Morrison walking into the waiting room with my letter, Mum's face when she realised I wasn't coming back, Sadie's followers watching her perfect family narrative collapse in real time. The plane lifted off, and I watched my old life shrink away below me. For the first time in 28 years, I was free. I found out what happened at the hospital through a series of increasingly frantic texts that Kimberly forwarded to my new phone. She'd stayed in touch with Brian, who was apparently fielding calls from my family like he was running a crisis hotline. The first message came at 9:47 a.m. Where is she? Mum. Then. Lillian isn't answering her phone. Surgery was supposed to start an hour ago. Brian. By noon, the messages had escalated. She's not at her apartment. Her car is in the driveway, but she's gone. Sadie. But the one that made my stomach drop came at 2:15 p.m. Doctor wants to see us. He has an envelope. Brian Kimberly called me from the hotel room I'd rented 3 states away. Lil, Brian just texted me. They're all in Dr. Morrison's office right now. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the generic hotel art on the wall. Is he reading the letter? I think so. Brian's not responding to my texts anymore. I'd spent 3 days writing that letter, pouring 28 years of silence onto 4 pages. Every dismissal, every time they'd treated me like furniture, every medical bill I'd paid alone while they complained about their own problems. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Lillian? It was Brian's voice, but he sounded exhausted. Jesus Christ, where are you? I'm safe. Your family is losing their minds. Your mother is, well, she's not handling this well. What did Dr. Morrison tell them? He read your letter, all of it. I closed my eyes. And? Your mum fainted. Sadie started screaming at the doctor like this was his fault. Your dad just sat there. What about the paired exchange? Dr. Morrison explained that you'd arranged for a kidney through the program. That your father would still get his transplant, just not from you. When? Next week, if the family agrees to the conditions? The conditions. I'd almost forgotten about those. They have to agree to family counselling, Brian continued. Mandatory sessions with a hospital therapist before and after the surgery. Dr. Morrison said it's hospital policy when there are family dynamics that might affect patient care. That wasn't hospital policy. That was me. I figured, Lil, what the hell did you write in that letter? I walked to the hotel window and looked out at a city where no one knew my name. The truth. Well, your truth just blew up your family. Sadie's been posting non-stop about how you abandoned them. The comments are not pretty. What kind of comments? People calling you selfish, heartless. But also, he paused. Also, a lot of people defending you, saying your family sounds toxic. Sadie's losing followers. Good. Let her feel what it was like to be abandoned for once. Brian, can I ask you something? Shoot. In all the years you've known my family, did you ever notice how they treated me? There was a long silence. Yeah, kiddo, I noticed. Why didn't you ever say anything? I should have, I'm sorry. That evening, Kimberly sent me screenshots of Sadie's Instagram stories. The first few were typical Sadie drama, crying selfies with captions like, when family betrays you, and pray for my father. But then the comments started turning. Someone had posted, "Your sister was supposed to risk her life, and you're mad she chose herself." Yikes. Another, "Maybe ask yourself why she felt like she had to disappear instead of just saying no." And then, "I've been following your family journey, and honestly, your sister sounds like she's been your family's unpaid therapist, an ATM for years." Sadie tried to control the narrative with a long post about family loyalty and sacrifice, but it backfired spectacularly. People started dissecting her previous posts, pointing out how she'd treated my potential surgery like content, how she'd never mentioned my health concerns or fears. The next morning, Brian called again. "Your family had their first counselling session yesterday. How did it go?" "About as well as you'd expect. The therapist asked them to describe their relationship with you. Your mum spent 20 minutes talking about how difficult you've always been." Of course she did. But then the therapist asked for specific examples. And when your mum couldn't give any that didn't make her sound terrible, Sadie jumped in. "Oh, no." She started talking about how you never supported her career, how you were jealous of her success. The therapist asked what kind of support she'd given you for your health issues. And Sadie said, and I quote, "That's different. Her disease isn't that serious." I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. In front of a medical professional. Gets better. The therapist then asked your dad to describe a positive memory he had of you. He couldn't think of one, Lil. Not one. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd known it, of course, but hearing it confirmed was different. The therapist told them the transplant is on hold pending further evaluation. What kind of evaluation? Psychological evaluation of the family dynamics. Apparently, there are concerns about whether your father would have adequate emotional support during recovery. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. "Brian, there's something else I need to tell you." "What?" "I'm not coming back. Ever." "Lil, I mean it. I'm done. They can have their kidney. They can have their counselling, but they can't have me." "What about your job? Your apartment?" "I already gave notice. Kimberly's packing up my stuff." "Where will you go?" I looked out at the city sprawling below my hotel window. Somewhere out there was a new life waiting for me. Somewhere they'll never think to look. 3 weeks after I disappeared, Sadie posted a tearful apology video. Kimberly sent me the link with a message. "You need to see this train wreck." I was sitting in a coffee shop in Portland, Oregon, using the free Wi-Fi and trying to decide if I should dye my hair. The barista had been flirting with me all week, and I was starting to think, maybe I could have a normal life here. Then I clicked on Sadie's video. "Hey, everyone," she said, her face blotchy and makeup free. "I need to address some things that have been said about my family and my sister." The comments were already brutal. "Too little, too late." "Where was this energy when your sister needed support?" "Your follower count says everything." She'd lost over half her followers in 3 weeks. Her sponsorship deals had dried up after people started calling her out for exploiting family trauma. "I realise now that I may have misrepresented some things about our situation," she continued. "My sister was dealing with serious health concerns that I didn't fully understand." May have misrepresented. Classic Sadie. My phone buzzed. "Brian, your mom's been emailing you," he said when I answered. "I don't have access to that email anymore." "She wants you to know that your dad's surgery is scheduled for next week. The family passed their psychological evaluation." "Barely, I'm guessing." "The therapist recommended ongoing counselling for at least 6 months. Your mum's not happy about it." "I bet she's not." "Lil, she's also asking if you'll come to the surgery, just to be there." I laughed out loud, causing the barista to look over with concern. "She wants me to come support the family that drove me to flee the state?" I told her it was unlikely. "Good call. There's something else." The therapist asked to speak with you. She thinks your perspective would be valuable for your family's treatment. My perspective is that they're toxic and I'm better off without them. Maybe that's exactly what she needs to hear. That evening, I called Dr. Sarah Martinez, the family therapist. She had a warm voice with a slight accent, and she didn't waste time on pleasantries. Lillian, thank you for calling. I've been working with your family for 3 weeks now. How's that going? It's challenging. They're very resistant to examining their own behaviour patterns. That sounds about right. I've read your letter, the one you left for Dr. Morrison to share. It was quite illuminating. I tried to be honest. You were. Perhaps more honest than they were prepared for. Can you tell me about your decision to leave? You mean, besides the fact that they were treating me like a spare parts catalogue? Dr. Martinez was quiet for a moment. In our sessions, your family presents a very different narrative. They describe you as someone who was always difficult, who had trouble maintaining relationships. Of course they do. But your letter tells a different story. Medical bills you paid alone, family events you attended despite being ill, years of being dismissed and overlooked. Did they deny any of it? They reframed it. Your mother said you were independent and didn't ask for help. Your sister said you were private about your health issues. I almost hung up. This was exactly why I'd left. Lillian, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. Okay. Do you believe your father deserves to live? The question caught me off guard. Of course I do, but you arranged for him to receive a kidney through the paired exchange program, knowing it would come with conditions that would force your family into therapy. Yes. Why? I stared out the coffee shop window at people walking by, living their normal lives. Because I wanted them to understand what they'd done to me, and because maybe, if they got help, they could be better people. That's a very generous way to look at it. Or a very vindictive one, perhaps both. Lillian, your family is struggling. Your father's surgery is next week, but the emotional work is just beginning. Your mother is having panic attacks. Your sister's career has essentially collapsed. Good. Is it? Is their suffering making you feel better? I thought about that. Was it? When I saw Sadie's follower count dropping, when Brian told me about Mum's panic attacks, did I feel satisfied? Sometimes, I admitted. That's honest and normal. You were hurt for a very long time. I was invisible for 28 years. You're not invisible now. No, I'm not. Lillian, I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. I'd like you to write another letter, not to your family, but to me, about what you need from them to even consider having any kind of relationship in the future. I don't want a relationship with them. You might not. But you arranged for your father to get a kidney. You could have just disappeared and let him die. You didn't. She was right, and I hated that she was right. What would happen to the letter? I'd read it in our next family session. Let them hear what it would take for you to even consider speaking to them again. They'll never agree to it. Maybe not, but they might surprise you. After I hung up, I sat in the coffee shop until closing time, thinking about what Dr. Martinez had said. The barista, his name was Marcus, came over as I was packing up my laptop. You okay? You look like you're wrestling with something big. My family, I said, they're complicated. Aren't they all? Not like this. He sat down across from me. Want to talk about it? And for the first time in my life, I told a complete stranger the truth about my family. All of it. Marcus listened without judgment, occasionally asking questions, never trying to fix anything. When I finished, he said, "Sounds like you're the sanest one in the bunch. Or the most vindictive. Maybe both. But you know what? Sometimes people need consequences to change. That night, I started writing the second letter. This one was harder than the first because it wasn't about the past. It was about the future, and I wasn't sure I wanted them to have one with me in it. The second letter took me 4 days to write. I must have started over a dozen times, trying to find the right words for what I needed from them. Not what I wanted. That ship had sailed. But what I needed to even consider them human beings worth knowing. Dr. Martinez called me the morning she planned to read it to my family. "Are you sure about this, Lillian? Once I read this letter, there's no taking it back." "I'm sure. It's quite specific and demanding." "Good. They've had 28 years to figure out how to treat me like a person. Now, they get a roadmap. Some of your conditions are going to be very difficult for them. Then they'll have to decide what's more important, their pride or having me in their lives." That afternoon, Brian called me. I was at the Portland Art Museum trying to distract myself by looking at paintings I didn't understand. "Jesus, Lil, what did you put in that letter?" "The truth, again. Your mum walked out halfway through, just got up and left. And?" Sadie started crying, not her usual dramatic crying, real crying. Your dad asked the therapist to read it again." "What specifically made Mum leave?" "The part where you said she needed to acknowledge out loud every time she dismissed your health concerns, with specific dates and examples." I'd spent hours going through old medical records and journals, documenting every time Mum had minimised my symptoms, every time she'd made me feel guilty for being sick. "What about the apology requirement?" That's where Sadie lost it. She said she couldn't apologise for things she didn't remember doing. So she admits she doesn't remember how she treated me. Pretty much. The therapist pointed that out too. I found a bench in front of a painting of a woman alone in a field. She looked peaceful, like she'd found something the rest of the world was still searching for. "Brian, what did Dad say when they read the part about him?" There was a long pause. "He said he didn't know how to be a father to you." That hit harder than I expected. "At least he's honest." He also said he wanted to try, if you'd let him. Wanting and doing are different things. I know, but Lil, I've never seen him like this. He's scared. Of dying without ever knowing his daughter. 2 days later, Kimberly forwarded me a screenshot of Sadie's latest Instagram post. It was a photo of her sitting in what looked like a therapist's office. No makeup, hair in a messy bun. The caption read, "Taking a break from social media to work on myself. I've hurt people I love, and I need to figure out how to be better. Some of you have been asking about my sister. She was right to leave. I hope someday I can earn the chance to tell her that." The comments were surprisingly supportive. People talking about their own family therapy experiences, about learning to take accountability. Marcus found me crying in the coffee shop that evening. "Bad news?" he asked, sliding into the seat across from me. "I don't know. Maybe good news. I can't tell anymore." "Family stuff?" I showed him Sadie's post. He read it twice. Sounds like progress. Or manipulation. She's good at saying what people want to hear. Maybe. But posting about therapy? That's not exactly on brand for an influencer. He was right. Sadie's whole image was about having the perfect life, the perfect family, the perfect everything. Admitting she needed help was career suicide. "What if they actually change?" I asked. "What if they don't?" "Then I stay here and build a new life. And if they do?" I stared out the window at the Portland skyline. "I don't know." That night, Dr. Martinez called again. "Your family wants to respond to your letter?" "Respond? How?" "They want to write you a letter, each of them, addressing the specific points you raised." "I don't want to read their excuses." not excuses, accountability. I've made it clear that any letter needs to acknowledge what they did wrong, not explain why they did it. What's the difference? I dismissed your health concerns because I was stressed about money is an excuse. I dismissed your health concerns and that was wrong is accountability. And you think they can do that? Your sister is already working on hers. Your father asked for help writing his because he says he doesn't know how to put feelings into words. Your mother? Let me guess. Mum's refusing. She's struggling with the concept that her intentions don't matter if the impact was harmful. Classic Mum. Lillian, there's something else. Your father's surgery is tomorrow. My stomach dropped. How is he? Nervous. He asked if you were coming. What did you tell him? That you were thinking about him? I am. Are you thinking about coming? I closed my eyes. No, I can't. Not yet. That's okay. Healing isn't linear and it's not on anyone else's timeline. The next morning, I sat in the coffee shop, refreshing Brian's text messages. At 11 a.m., surgery started. At 2 p.m. Everything went well. New kidney is working perfectly. At 4 p.m., he's awake. First thing he said was, "Is Lillian okay?" I stared at that last message for a long time. In 28 years, I couldn't remember my father ever asking if I was okay. Marcus found me there at closing time, still staring at my phone. Good news or bad news? Good news. My father's surgery was successful. That's great. Why do you look like someone died? Because now I have to decide what comes next. What do you want to come next? I looked at this man who barely knew me, but had shown me more kindness in a month than my family had in years. I want to be okay with whatever I choose. Are you? Getting there. That night, I started writing a third letter, not to my family, but to myself, about who I wanted to be now that I wasn't defined by their expectations or their neglect. For the first time in my life, I was writing my own story. 6 weeks after Dad's surgery, 3 letters arrived at my Portland P.O. box. I recognised the handwriting on all of them. Even Dad's shaky scrawl looked familiar. I carried them to the coffee shop where Marcus was working the morning shift. He took one look at my face and poured me a double shot of espresso. The family letters? Yeah. You going to read them? Eventually. I sat at my usual table by the window and stared at the envelopes. Sadie's was thick, probably 10 pages. Dad's was thin, maybe 2 pages. Mum's was medium-sized, and her handwriting looked different somehow. Less controlled. I opened Dad's first. Lillian. I don't know how to write this. Dr. Martinez says I should tell you what I did wrong, not why I did it. So here goes. I was never a father to you. I was in the house, but I wasn't present. When you were sick, I left it to your mother. When you needed help, I assumed someone else would handle it. When you tried to talk to me, I acted like you were bothering me. I don't remember your high school graduation speech. I don't remember what you studied in college. I don't remember the last time I asked how you were feeling. You saved my life by arranging that kidney donation. But more than that, you saved me from dying without ever knowing what I'd lost. I lost my daughter because I never tried to know her. I can't fix 28 years. But if you'll let me, I'd like to try to be your father now, even if it's too late. Love. Dad. P.S. I'm learning to cook. Mom says you like lasagna. I had to put the letter down. My hands were shaking. Marcus appeared with a box of tissues. That bad? That good? Which is somehow worse. Sadie's letter was next. Her handwriting was messier than usual, like she'd been crying while writing it. Lil. I've started this letter 50 times. Dr. Martinez keeps making me rewrite it because I keep trying to explain instead of just owning what I did. So, here's what I did. I treated you like my personal assistant instead of my sister. I used your medical crisis for content. I dismissed your fears about surgery because they were inconvenient for my narrative. I called you selfish when you were actually the most selfless person in our family. I made everything about me, including your pain. I've been going through my old posts, and I can see it now. Every family photo where you look uncomfortable, every family update where I talked about everyone except you. Every time I asked you to help me with something, but never asked how you were doing. I deleted my Instagram account, not because of the backlash, but because I realized I was performing my life instead of living it. And I was making you perform too. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I don't know if I deserve it. But I want you to know that I see you now. I see what I missed. I see what I lost. I love you. I should have said that more. Sadie. P.S. I'm in therapy twice a week now. Turns out I have a lot to work on. Mum's letter was the hardest to read. Lillian. Dr. Martinez says I need to take responsibility for my actions without defending them. This is very difficult for me because I spent your entire life believing I was a good mother. I was not a good mother to you. I made you responsible for managing everyone else's emotions while ignoring your own. I treated your illness like an inconvenience. I made you feel guilty for needing help while expecting you to help everyone else without complaint. When you were 12 and had that bad flare-up, you asked me to stay home from work to take care of you. I said I couldn't because Sadie had a school play. You never asked me to stay home again. When you were 22 and couldn't afford your medication, you sold your laptop to pay for it. I found out months later and never offered to help. I told myself you were learning independence. When you tried to talk to me about your fears before the surgery, I called you dramatic because it was easier than admitting I was scared too. I failed you in every way a mother can fail a child. I made you invisible in your own family. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that I see what I did, and I'm sorry. Mom. I sat in that coffee shop for 2 hours, reading and rereading those letters. Marcus kept checking on me, refilling my coffee, not asking questions. Finally, I pulled out my phone and called Dr. Martinez. Lillian? I was hoping you'd call. Did you receive the letters? I did. What did you think? I think they actually get it. Finally! They do. It's been a difficult process, but they're doing the work. How's Dad? Physically, he's doing very well. The new kidney is functioning perfectly. Emotionally, he's different, quieter, more thoughtful. He asks about you every session. And, Mum? Your mother is struggling the most with accepting responsibility. But she's trying. She's been reading books about emotional neglect, attending a support group for parents who've damaged relationships with their children. What about Sadie? Sadie's made the most dramatic changes. She's completely stepped back from social media, started volunteering at a local hospital. She says she wants to understand what it's like to help people without getting anything in return. I stared out the window at people walking by, living their normal lives. Dr. Martinez, what happens now? That's up to you. They're all committed to continuing therapy with or without you, but they'd like the chance to show you they've changed. And if I say no, then you say no. You don't owe them anything, Lillian. Not forgiveness, not a relationship, not even a response to these letters. That evening, I called Brian. How are you holding up, kiddo? Better than I expected. Worse than I hoped. That sounds about right. Your family's been asking if I've heard from you. What do you tell them? That you're safe and that's all they need to know. Brian, can I ask you something? Always. Do you think people can really change? Some people, the ones who want to badly enough. Do you think they want to? I think losing you scared them more than your dad's kidney failure did. And that's saying something. I walked to the window of my small apartment and looked out at the Portland skyline. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably closing up the coffee shop. Somewhere else, my family was going to bed in a house that felt different without me in it. Brian, I need you to give them a message. What's the message? Tell them I got their letters. Tell them I'm proud of them for doing the work. And tell them I'm not ready to come home yet, but I'm not ruling it out forever. That's a good message, Lil. And Brian, tell Dad his lasagna better be amazing when I finally try it. He laughed. I'll tell him. I hung up and sat down at my laptop. For the first time in months, I started writing. Not a letter to my family, but something else. A story about a woman who disappeared and found herself. A story about the price of revenge and the cost of freedom. A story about learning that sometimes the best gift you can give someone is showing them who they really are, even when it hurts. I titled it, My Father Needed a Kidney, and I was the only match. Then I started typing. They could survive without me, if they tried for once. Some stories don't have happy endings. Some have necessary ones. This was mine.